The day was too bright for mercy. The sand in the yard had been raked into neat ridges, as if order could be made with a comb when a man's life was about to be decided. The sun struck the red keep stone until it looked bleached, old bones laid bare. Heat shimmered at the edges of sight. Above the pit, banners stirred in a lazy wind, lions and roses and lesser sigils, while the small folk pressed up against the walls like barnacles clinging to a ship. Tyrion Lannister sat where they had chained him, iron biting through his sleeves to the meat beneath, and tried not to think of the taste of water from his cell, of straw gone sour, of the way his father's eyes had already set him in the ground. The court could say what it liked about justice. The yard below was honest in the simplest way. It promised only this: a stronger man might decide what was true. A horn sounded. The roar that followed felt like a tide hitting stone. Oberyn Martell entered as if he were stepping into a feast rather than a killing ground. Gold scales over leather caught the sun and threw it back. His cloak was the red of fresh pomegranate. His hair was loose, dark curls damp at the temples, and his spear turned in his fingers like something alive. He did not look at Tyrion at first. He looked past everything, over the heads of the crowd, toward the iron spikes along the walls, toward nothing anyone else could see. Rhaegar Clegane came after, and even the roar changed. It did not become quieter exactly. It became heavier. The mountain wore black plate that drank the light. Each step sank into the sand as if the yard itself wished to swallow him rather than hold him up. His helm was shaped like a snarling dog, and the sound of his breath within it was the sound of something penned. The herald's voice rang out names and crimes and claims. Tyrion heard his own called, felt a laugh claw at his throat, and swallowed it down. The words did not matter now. Only distance mattered. Only timing. Only the small, plain truth that a spear could keep a man alive if he respected what it was built to do. Oberyn lifted the spear in salute. Not to the king, not to the hand, not even to the gods, but to the dead. It was brief, and no one else could have known it for what it was. Then he lowered into his stance, light on his feet, and smiled at the mountain's helm as if they shared a private joke. Rhaegar Clegane's greatsword came out like a slab pulled from a tomb. The first rush was a test. The mountain came forward with brute certainty, sword whistling down in an arc meant to end stories in a single stroke. Oberyn moved sideways, sand spraying from his heel. The blade hit nothing but air and threw grit into the crowd. A few people cried out anyway, as if they could already feel it on their skin. Oberyn's spear flicked out, quick as a snake. The tip kissed Rhaegar's thigh where plates met. Blood beaded dark and fast. A murmur rolled up the walls. Tyrion leaned forward until the chain at his wrist went taut. He could see how Oberyn moved, never straight back, never trapped between wall and steel. It was dancing, but it was also arithmetic. Measure, subtract, live. Rhaegar swung again, higher, trying to catch Oberyn's head. Oberyn dipped, the wind of the sword tugging at his hair. The spear struck the mountain's arm, found a seam, and scratched a red line there too. "Slow," Oberyn said, and his voice carried. It was the voice of a man who had decided, long before today, what the ending would be. "Too slow," Rhaegar growled. A sound trapped inside iron and charged. The sand betrayed him, just a little. His boots were too heavy, his rage too straight. Oberyn slid away and cut him again. Another seam, another bead of dark. After the third cut, Rhaegar's anger turned into something else. Not fear. Rhaegar Clegane did not have the delicacy for fear, but frustration. The crowd began to understand. Understanding made them cruel. They laughed. They cheered the blood that wasn't theirs. Cersei Lannister's hands were white at the parapet. Tyrion saw her mouth form his name and twist as if it tasted like rot. Oberyn's breathing stayed even. He circled. He waited for the mountain to overreach, for brute strength to become clumsy, for the sun to do its work. It was then, in the pause between strikes, that Tyrion saw something colder behind the prince's smile. It was not the pleasure of winning. It was the patience of a man gathering what he came for. "You know why I'm here," Oberyn called. "You know her name." Rhaegar's answer was a rush and a scream of steel. The mountain's sword came down, and Oberyn leapt aside, but not far enough to satisfy cowardice. The blade clipped the spear shaft, jolting it hard in Oberyn's hands. For an instant the yard narrowed to that point of contact, wood and iron force against control. Oberyn released and let the spear turn with the blow instead of fighting it. He stepped into the mountain's shadow and punched with the butt of the spear at Rhaegar's helm. It rang like a bell. Rhaegar staggered half a step. Oberyn's spear tip flashed, not toward the mountain's body, but toward his face. It slid through the ice-lit and nicked skin. Blood ran out beneath the dog helm, startling in its brightness. The crowd screamed now, all one voice. The mountain roared and lifted his sword for a sideways sweep meant to cut a man in half. Oberyn was already gone. He flowed back, the spear reforming in his grip as if it had never been knocked aside. He came in again, quick, and this time the tip sank into the hollow behind Rhaegar's knee with a practiced cruelty. The mountain's leg buckled. Sand puffed up. Rhaegar went down on one knee, sword tip biting into the ground to brace him. That was when Oberyn stopped. Not because he had to, because he chose to. Silence fell in pieces. The roar ebbed, confused, then returned as murmurs. Tyrion felt his own heart pounding as if it wanted to escape his ribs. The prince stood a SP, ear-length away from a kneeling monster, and did not finish him. Instead he spoke softly, and still the yard heard. "Say it," Oberyn said. "Say what you did. Say her name." Rhaegar's breath rasped. His head tilted as if he were trying to sniff out something he could tear apart. Oberyn took one step closer, spear point steady at Rhaegar's throat. The sun turned the spearhead into a sliver of fire. "I want it from your mouth," Oberyn said. "Not rumor, not songs. I want the words." "Martell," Rhaegar managed, thick through the helm. A laugh, almost a cough. Oberyn's smile tightened. "Yes, Martell." He lowered his voice further. "The princess, the children." Rhaegar's sword trembled in his fist. His knee sank deeper. There was blood on the sand, more than the small cuts now. The poison, whatever Oberyn had used, however lightly, had started its quiet work. Rhaegar's mouth moved behind iron. When the sound came, it was ugly in its honesty, the way a butcher's truth is ugly. He spoke of a woman in a red keep room, of hands that broke bone, of a scream cut short. He spoke of children. He spoke of the wet finality of it. The words came out like stones, one after another, and Tyrion's stomach turned. Not because he doubted them, but because he could see how the court would try to pretend they had not heard. Oberyn's eyes did not change. "Who told you?" he asked. "Who gave you leave?" Rhaegar's helm lifted, slow, resisting even this. "Say it," Oberyn whispered. His voice was now for one man alone. Rhaegar's breath hitched. The poison took something from him. Perhaps it took control, perhaps it took caution. What it left was spite. "Tywin," Rhaegar said, and the yard froze. Tywin Lannister. The name landed like a thrown knife. For a heartbeat, even the small folk understood what it meant to speak such a name aloud with blood on the sand. On the balcony, Tywin Lannister did not move. His face might have been carved. Oberyn held the moment in his palm and then crushed it. The mountain lunged with sudden animal speed, reaching for Oberyn's ankle, for anything he could drag down. Oberyn did not jump back too late, did not let pride hold him close. He sprang away as if the sand itself had snapped him back, and his spear shot forward, straight, clean, unhesitating. The tip drove into Rhaegar's throat where plate could not protect him. The dog helm rang again, not from impact but from the violent shudder of a body realizing it had been betrayed by its own strength. Rhaegar's gauntlet hands clawed at the shaft. Oberyn twisted and withdrew, then struck once more, a fast second bite that finished what the first began. Rhaegar Clegane toppled sideways, sword slipping from his fingers, the weight of him making the sand jump. For a second, there was only the sound of the prince's breathing. Then the yard erupted. Tyrion slumped against the stone behind him, dizzy with relief so sharp it felt like pain. Somewhere below, a man shouted Oberyn's name. Somewhere else, a woman wept. Tyrion watched Oberyn stand over the mountain's body, spear held low, and stare up at Tywin Lannister as if the spear could reach the balcony if he willed it. Oberyn's eyes were bright, not with triumph, with a promise. The gods had spoken. Men would spend the rest of the day arguing about what the gods meant. They came into the yard with a cautious speed, as if the mountain might rise again through force of spite alone. Gold cloaks first, then guards in Lannister crimson. A maester lingered at the edge like a man afraid of catching death by proximity. Oberyn let them have the body without protest. He planted the butt of his spear in the sand and stood with his shoulders loose, his expression unreadable, as if his blood had been left behind in the cuts he'd carved into Rhaegar Clegane. Up on the balcony, Jaime Lannister moved, white cloak, bright as bone. Tyrion watched his brother weave through the press of courtiers and guards, and for a moment he forgot to breathe. Jaime's hand, when it touched the chain, was warm through the glove. "You're free," Jaime said under his breath. Tyrion almost laughed. He almost cried. Instead he stared down at the yard, at Oberyn, because freedom was never a simple thing in King's Landing. It was a word that meant one thing when spoken by a brother and another thing entirely when heard by a father. Jaime worked the lock. The iron gave with a reluctant click. Tyrion's wrists were raw, and the sudden absence of weight felt wrong, like stepping onto a stair that wasn't there. Across the balcony, Cersei's gaze found him and stuck like a thorn. She did not look like a woman who had just watched her champion die. She looked like a woman who had watched someone else survive. Tywin Lannister stepped forward, and the murmurs died. He did not shout. He never needed to. Even his silence had command. "Ser Rhaegar Clegane is dead," Tywin said, as if naming it was the same as controlling it. "The gods have declared Lord Tyrion innocent." The word innocent tasted strange in Tyrion's mouth. He wondered if his father choked on it as he spoke. Tywin's eyes moved to Oberyn. "Prince Oberyn," he continued, voice even. "You have your victory." Oberyn tilted his head. "Victory," he echoed, and there was hint of amusement that made the word sharp. "Is that what you call it?" "I call it a beginning." A ripple ran through the crowd. Tywin's jaw tightened so slightly Tyrion might have imagined it. "You have the confession you sought," Tywin said, and Tyrion felt the carefulness in it. "Confession, not truth. It was heard. You will take it as you will. But you will not turn my city into a Dornish theater." Oberyn's smile came back, bright as a drawn blade. "Your city," he said. "How generous of the king to lend it to you." Someone laughed, quickly smothered. The king himself, Tommen, soft-faced and overwhelmed, looked to Tywin as if Tywin were the only grown man left in the yard. Oberyn swept a glance up at the royal dais, then back to Tywin. "You understand what was spoken here," he said, voice carrying. "A name, an order, blood." Tywin's eyes did not flicker. "In war," he said, "men say many things, dying men most of all." Oberyn lifted his spear, and the point caught the light like a star. "Dying men confess," he said, "and living men pretend not to hear." Tywin's gaze slid past Oberyn, toward the body being dragged across the sand. "The corpse will be cleaned and sent to the Silent Sisters," he said, as if granting kindness. "If you wish for a token, you may have the helm, or the sword." Oberyn's expression changed at that, just for an instant. It was the look of a man offered a trinket in exchange for a lifetime. "I will have what is mine," he said. Tywin waited. Oberyn's voice softened, and the softness made it more dangerous. "The skull," he said. "The head, stripped and salted, sent to Sunspear as proof." And the words he spoke, Oberyn glanced at the crowd, as if daring them to forget. "Written down, sealed, signed by your maester, witnessed by your septons. Let the realm read what your monster did." A murmur rose again. Tywin did not look at the maesters. He did not look at the faith. He looked at Oberyn as one might look at a man asking for an impossible sum of gold and trying not to show surprise that the man understood the value. "You have his death," Tywin said. "Be satisfied." Oberyn stepped closer to the base of the wall, so he could look up without craning. "You don't know Dorne," he said quietly. "We do not take death as payment when the debt is dishonor." Tywin's mouth was a line. "And what would satisfy you?" he asked, as if he were still bargaining for grain. Oberyn held Tywin's gaze. "Justice," he said. Tywin's eyes were pale and hard. "There is no justice," he said, and Tyrion heard something honest in it at last. "There is only what men can take and what men can keep." Oberyn's smile returned, slow. "Then I will take," he said. Tywin lifted his chin by a fraction. It might have been defiance. It might have been dismissal. "You are a guest in King's Landing," he said. "Do not forget yourself." Oberyn's laugh was low. "A guest," he repeated. "I have always found that guests learn the most about a house." He turned then, spear in hand, and walked out of the yard as if he owned every stone he stepped upon. The crowd parted for him without being asked. Men shouted his name. Women reached as if they could touch the heat of him. Oberyn did not look at them. He did not look at Tyrion. But Tyrion saw him glance once, quickly, towards Cersei on the balcony, just long enough to let her know he had seen her, just long enough to let her wonder what he would do with the sight. When Oberyn was gone, the air felt colder despite the sun. Jaime's hand closed on Tyrion's shoulder. "Come," he said. Tyrion did not move at once. His eyes stayed on Tywin, because Tywin's gaze never left the yard. It was fixed on the sand where Rhaegar Clegane's blood had sunk into the ground. Tywin Lannister looked like a man watching a crack spread through stone. Night came like a bruise spreading across the sky, purple and deep. The rain arrived after, sudden and hard, washing the Red Keep's courtyards, tamping the dust back into mud. King's Landing smelled sweeter for it, less like piss, more like wet stone. But the sweetness did not last. The city had too much rot in it. Tyrion Lannister drank as if he were trying to drown the day before it could climb into his dreams. The first cup soothed his throat. The second made his hands stop shaking. By the third, he could almost pretend that freedom was something he could hold without it being snatched away. They had given him rooms again, smaller than those he'd once occupied, guarded more closely. A courtesy cage. Jaime had left him with a clasp on the shoulder and a look that had tried to say more than words could. Tywin had not come. Cersei had not come. Tyrion was not fool enough to think their silence was acceptance. A knock came at the door, soft, a pattern. The guard outside did not announce anyone. Instead, the latch lifted as if the door itself had decided to be polite. Oberyn Martell entered without hurry. He wore no armor now, only loose red and orange silks, a leather belt, boots damp at the cuffs from the rain. His hair was still loose, darker for the wet. He brought the smell of spice and storm. Behind him, Ellaria Sand stepped in like a shadow given shape. Her eyes swept the room with a calm that did not belong in King's Landing. Jaime Lannister was at the threshold, white cloak catching torchlight, not quite inside, not quite outside. His hand resting on his sword as if he were trying to decide whom he would need to protect. Tyrion set down his cup. "Prince Oberyn," he said. Oberyn's smile was easy. "Lord Tyrion," he answered, and there was humor in the title, as if they both knew how flimsy it was. "You have my thanks," Tyrion said. He meant it. The words were small for what had been done, but small words were all he had in this city. Oberyn crossed to the window lattice and leaned against it, looking out at the rain-smeared lights of the city. "Thanks," he said. "A neat little thing. Does it fit comfortably in your mouth?" Tyrion huffed a laugh he could not help. "It fits better than a spear," he said. Ellaria's mouth curved at that. Jaime's expression did not. Oberyn glanced back over his shoulder. "You're alive," he said, as if that were the interesting part of Tyrion. "And I am still alive. Today was full of miracles." "You didn't do it for me," Tyrion said. Oberyn turned fully then, and the candlelight caught the sharpness of his face, the way his eyes seemed to hold more heat than the flame. "No," he said simply. Silence stretched. Rain tapped the lead glass in a steady rhythm. Tyrion found himself thinking of his mother's face from portraits, long dead, long gone, and wondered whether she would have liked this Dornish prince who spoke truth as easily as others spoke lies. Oberyn pushed off the window and strolled toward the table. He picked up Tyrion's cup, sniffed it, and took a sip without asking. "Tell me," he said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, "how does it feel to watch your father lose?" Tyrion's smile turned bitter. "My father does not lose," he said. "He adjusts." "Ah," Oberyn said, delighted, as if Tyrion had offered a clever joke. "Yes, he adjusts the world until it fits his hand." He set the cup down. "But today, the world slipped a little." Tyrion's wrists ached beneath the bandages. "It slipped because you held it," he said. "Because I stabbed it," Oberyn corrected. Jaime shifted at the door. "Why are you here?" he asked, voice cautious. Oberyn's gaze flicked to him, amused. "To drink your brother's wine," he said, "and to see the look on your face. It's nearly worth the trip." Jaime's eyes tightened. "You got what you wanted," he said. "Rhaegar is dead." Oberyn's expression cooled. "Rhaegar was never the debt," he said. "Rhaegar was the coin. The debt is paid by those who minted him." Tyrion watched him carefully. There was fury in the words, but there was also calculation. Oberyn did not strike like a man who could not help himself. He struck like a man choosing where to place a blade so it would cut deepest later. "What will you do?" Tyrion asked. Oberyn's smile returned, softer. "You ask as if you don't already know," he said. "I will ask for what is owed. I will take what I can. I will make them remember the name they tried to bury." "Tywin will never give you what you want," Tyrion said. Oberyn leaned closer, bracing one hand on the table. "Then I will take something else," he murmured. Alaria's hand touched Oberyn's arm, light as a warning. He did not pull away, but his eyes flicked to her with a tenderness that made Tyrion's throat tighten unexpectedly. Even vipers, it seemed, could love. Tyrion cleared his throat. "If you intend to strike at my father," he said, "you should be aware he strikes back." Oberyn's laugh was quiet. "Yes," he said, "that is why he has lived so long." He straightened. "But tell me, Lord Tyrion, what do you strike at when you strike at Tywin Lannister? His gold? He has mountains of it. His sons? One is too noble, one too weak. His daughter? She is already at war with her own blood." Jaime's hand tightened on his sword hilt at that. "Careful," he warned. Oberyn ignored him. His gaze returned to Tyrion. "What does Tywin love?" he asked. Tyrion almost answered, almost said nothing, but that was a child's answer, and Tyrion was tired of being a child in his father's shadow. "He loves legacy," Tyrion said. "He loves the story that the world will tell when he is dead." Oberyn's eyes gleamed. "Yes," he said, pleased. "A man who will burn a kingdom to write his name in clean ink." He lifted Tyrion's cup again, as if toasting. "Then perhaps we should spill enough ink to drown him." Tyrion studied him. "You want allies," he said. Oberyn shrugged. "I want truth," he said. "Allies are simply the tools truth uses to survive." Tyrion swallowed, feeling the weight beneath the words. "And what truth are you hunting now?" he asked. Oberyn's gaze drifted toward the door, toward Jaime, then back. His smile sharpened. "Not here," he said. "Not where the walls have ears." His eyes flicked up to the ceiling as if he could see the listening stones. "But soon." Jaime took a step forward. "If you're plotting in the Red Keep," Oberyn cut him off with an easy gesture. "I am always plotting," he said. "It's a hobby." Alaria's eyes softened with weary affection. "A dangerous hobby," she murmured. Oberyn reached for her hand and squeezed once. Brief. Then he looked at Tyrion again, and the warmth drained. "You owe me," Oberyn said, blunt now. Tyrion's throat tightened. "For saving my life?" he asked. "For giving you back your life," Oberyn corrected. "Which is more valuable, because now you have to decide what to do with it." Tyrion exhaled. "Name it," he said. Oberyn's smile returned, bright and sharp. "Listen," he said. "Watch, and when the time comes, speak. Your father fears many things, but he fears your tongue more than he fears any sword." Tyrion almost laughed again. Then he realized Oberyn was not flattering him. He was assigning him a role. "And what do you intend to do?" Tyrion asked. Oberyn's eyes were black in the candlelight. "I intend," he said, "to find the kind of knife that doesn't just cut a man. It cuts his story." The rain hammered harder against the window, as if the sky itself approved. The tunnels beneath the red keep smelled of damp stone and old smoke, like a hearth that had been cold for years. Water dripped somewhere in the dark, steady as a heartbeat. The walls pressed close, not with weight but with familiarity, as if they had held 1,000 conspiracies and could make room for 1,000 more. Oberyn Martell walked as if he had been born underground. His boots made almost no sound on the worn steps. Ellaria Sand followed a pace behind, her presence quiet but fierce, her hand never far from the small blade she kept tucked where a sleeve could hide it. When the oil lamp ahead flared, it revealed Varys waiting at a turn in the passage. He was hooded, the cloth dark and plain, his face round and pale as moonlight. Only his eyes betrayed him, bright, watchful, amused. "Prince Oberyn," Varys said softly, as if greeting a guest in a garden. "How good of you to come." Oberyn did not slow. "You sent for me," he said. "I'm curious, not obedient." Varys's smile was gentle. "Curiosity is the most dangerous kind of obedience," he murmured. Ellaria's gaze stayed on Varys's hands. Oberyn's gaze stayed on Varys's face. "Speak," Oberyn said. "If you waste my time, I'll take it from you." Varys lifted his hands in surrender. "I value my time too much to waste yours," he said, "and I value my neck too much to gamble with it." He stepped aside, gesturing deeper into the tunnel where the air was cooler. "Walk with me." They moved together through the underground dark, 3 shadows and 1 lamp. The red keep above them was a beast asleep on its hoard, unaware of the small creatures moving beneath its ribs. "I heard what the mountain said," Varys began, voice mild. "Names have weight. Spoken aloud, they become stones thrown at windows." Oberyn's smile was without humor. "It was your window," he said. Varys's laugh was small. "Oh, Prince," he said, "every window in this city is mine. Some I polish, some I crack." Oberyn's fingers tightened on the spear he carried even here, its shaft wrapped in cloth to hush its sound. "Why?" he asked. "Why invite me down to your burrow? Are you offering condolences or bargains?" Varys's pace remained unhurried. "Neither," he said. "I'm offering information." Ellaria's voice was quiet. "Information costs," she said. "Yes," Varys agreed easily. "And it is often paid for in blood." Oberyn's eyes narrowed. "Then keep it," he said. "I have blood enough." Varys stopped at a place where the tunnel widened into an old chamber. Something that might once have been storage, now empty except for a broken crate and a scattering of rat bones. The lamp made the shadows dance. "There are different kinds of vengeance," Varys said. "One kind takes a life, another kind takes a future." Oberyn's expression did not change. "You sound like a Septon," he said. Varys shook his head. "No," he said. "Septon's words are meant to comfort. Mine are meant to steer." He looked at Oberyn carefully. "You want Tywin Lannister to suffer," he said. "Not just in body, in legacy." He smiled faintly. "You said as much in the yard without saying it." Oberyn's spear tip lifted a fraction. "I do not need you to explain my own thoughts," he said. "Then allow me to offer you a thought you might not have had," Varys said. "A blade that does not simply cut Tywin's story, one that rewrites it entirely." Ellaria's breath caught slightly. Oberyn's eyes stayed steady. Varys's smile softened. "There is a boy in black," he said. Oberyn did not blink. "Many boys wear black," he said. "This one wears it at the edge of the world," Varys continued. "At the wall." Oberyn's expression flickered. A tiny change, the slightest narrowing of attention. "The Night's Watch," he said, tasting the words. "Why should I care about a boy freezing in the snow?" "Because he has a better name than he knows," Varys said. The lamp hissed softly. A drop of water fell somewhere and shattered on stone. Oberyn's voice turned careful. "Choose your next words well," he said. Varys inclined his head. "Ned Stark raised a bastard," he said. "Or so the realm believes." He watched Oberyn's face. But Ned Stark was not a man given to lust, nor to lies that served only himself. Yet he returned from war with a child and a story he refused to decorate. Oberyn, who had spent years hunting the truth behind Elaya's murder, connected the missing pieces. Rhaegar, Lyanna, the Tower of Joy, and a child hidden in plain sight. "You're telling me," Oberyn said slowly, "that a Stark bastard is your blade?" Varys's smile widened, almost kind. "Not a Stark," he said. "Not truly." He let the words hang, then offered them like a gift. "A dragon." Illyria's hand tightened on her dagger. Oberyn did not move. His face remained still, but inside him something shifted. A dragon, a living heir, a claim that could make the Lannisters' triumph over the Targaryens turn to ash. "You lie," Oberyn said at last. His voice was calm, which was more dangerous than anger. Varys placed a hand on his chest as if wounded. "I would never lie to you, Prince," he said. "Not about something so useful." Oberyn's laugh was low. "Useful," he repeated. "So this is about you." Varys spread his hands. "It is always about the realm," he said softly. "And the realm is made of men. Men like Tywin Lannister who believe they can shape everything by force. Men like you who believe they can shape everything by fire." He paused. "Perhaps it is time the realm was shaped by something else." Oberyn's eyes flashed. "By a boy," he said, disdain creeping in. "By a claim," Varys corrected. "By a story so powerful it makes Tywin's story small." Varys's gaze held Oberyn's. "Imagine it. The realm learns that the lion's victory was not the end of the dragon. That in the very year Tywin Lannister had Elia Martell butchered, the bloodline he thought extinguished was carried away and hidden by the most honorable man alive." Oberyn's throat tightened at Elaya's name. He heard it in Varys's mouth like a coin flipped between fingers. "You think I will kneel to a northern boy," Oberyn said. Varys's smile did not falter. "I think you will choose the revenge that lasts," he said. "Not merely a death, a reign." He leaned in. "And I think you will do it because you are not only a viper. You are a prince. You understand what thrones do." Oberyn stared at him. In his mind, Elaya's face rose. Gentle, weary, brave. Her children, their small hands, their stolen futures. He had come to King's Landing wanting blood. He had found it, and already it felt thin, like wine watered by rain. "What proof?" Oberyn demanded. Varys's eyes gleamed. "Pieces," he admitted. "Old vows, old witnesses. A crannogman who does not speak unless the world forces him." He tilted his head. "Howland Reed." Oberyn's mouth tightened. He had heard the name in connection with the Tower of Joy, a shadow clinging to Ned Stark's legend. "And what do you want?" Oberyn asked. Varys's smile returned. "I want the realm to live," he said. "I want winter to be met by something stronger than squabbling lions." He paused, then added almost gently, "And I want men like Tywin Lannister to learn that the world does not belong to them." Oberyn's laughter was quiet and sharp. "You want a puppet," he said. Varys shook his head. "No," he said. "I want a king. Puppets are easy to cut." He looked at Oberyn, eyes earnest in a way that might have been a mask. This boy, this man, perhaps by now, was raised without vanity, without court poison, without the taste for cruelty that grows in palaces. If there is any hope for the realm, it is in someone like that. Ilaria stepped closer. "And if you're wrong?" she asked. "If this is another lie that kills people?" Varys's gaze softened. "Then I will have added another tragedy to a kingdom already full of them," he said. "But I do not think I am wrong." Oberyn's mind was a storm now. A dragon in black at the wall, proof in the neck, a story that could crack Tywin's legacy like a hammer on glass. He wanted it. He hated that he wanted it. Oberyn's voice was low. "If I chase your dragon," he said, "and it turns out to be smoke, I will come back." Varys bowed slightly. "I would expect nothing less," he said. Oberyn turned, cloak whispering against stone. Ilaria followed, silent. Behind them, Varys's lamp light shrank, and the tunnels swallowed it. When Oberyn reached the stair that would take him back to the world above, he paused with one hand on the cold stone. Elia, he thought, not as a prayer, as a promise. If there was a living heir somewhere in the snow, then Tywin Lannister's triumph had been a lie from the beginning. And Oberyn Martell had always loved nothing more than exposing a lie. The Red Keep kept its knowledge the way it kept its gold. Behind doors with too many locks, guarded by men who had never read a word of what they protected. Oberyn Martell did not break locks. He broke people. Grand Maester Pycelle's chamber smelled of dust and herbs, of paper that had lived too long and men who wanted to live longer. The old man fussed with his sleeves, hands shaking as if the air itself was cold, though the candles burned bright and the brazier glowed. "Prince Oberyn," Pycelle wheezed, trying to summon dignity the way he summoned medicines. "This is most irregular. The hand," Oberyn said, cutting him off, "is very busy pretending he did not hear his own name spoken with blood on it." He moved through the room, fingers brushing spines of books as if selecting fruit. "I am not here to discuss what is regular." Ilaria stood near the door, her presence a quiet threat. Two Lannister guards shifted uneasily, unsure whether they were meant to stop the Dornish prince or pretend they had not seen him. Pycelle's eyes flicked to the guards as if they might save him. They did not move. Oberyn found what he wanted. An old map rolled and tied with cord, its edges frayed. He tapped it. "You keep records," he said. "Letters, annals, births, deaths." His gaze sharpened. "And lies," Pycelle swallowed. "We keep knowledge," he insisted, "for the good of the realm." Oberyn's smile was cruel. "You keep knowledge for the good of whoever holds your chain," he said. He stepped closer, and Pycelle's breath hitched. "Tell me about the war," Oberyn said. "The year of the rebellion, the Tower of Joy." Pycelle blinked rapidly. I was here," he said, voice thin. "In King's Landing. I could not." "But you heard," Oberyn said. "Maester's always here. That's why kings keep you close." He picked up a ledger, flipped it open. The script was neat, indifferent. There were ravens, reports, names. Pycelle's lips trembled. "Prince," he whispered. "I am an old man." Oberyn set the ledger down with a soft thud. "That is why you are still alive," he said. "Old men survive by being useful." He leaned in. "Be useful." Pycelle's eyes darted to Ilaria. "What do you want?" he asked, voice breaking. Oberyn spoke the question like a blade being drawn. "I want to know what you know," he said. "About Ned Stark's bastard." Pycelle frowned, confusion mixing with fear. His bastard?" he repeated, as if the word tasted sour. "Why would that?" Oberyn's hand shot out and grabbed Pycelle by the chain at his throat, jerking him forward. The old man gasped, fingers scrabbling at the links. The guards at the door stiffened. Ilaria did not move. "Because," Oberyn said softly, "I am tired of chasing ghosts when flesh still walks." Pycelle's eyes watered. "I don't," he choked. Oberyn released him, not out of mercy but out of control. Pycelle stumbled back, clutching his chain, coughing. "There were whispers," Pycelle rasped, desperate now. "Whispers only. Ned Stark returned with the child. He claimed the mother was a servant girl, or a wet nurse, or someone. He looked up at Oberyn, pleading. The details were never given. The Stark would not speak of it. Oberyn's expression did not change. "And the Tower of Joy?" he asked again. Pycelle shook his head frantically. "I do not know," he insisted. "Only that Lord Eddard Stark returned with fewer men than he left with. Only that he brought a sword, Dawn, the Daneblade, and returned it to Starfall. Only that there was grief." He swallowed hard. "And silence." Oberyn stared at him for a long moment, measuring the truth in the old man's trembling. Then he turned away, scanning the shelves again. "What about Howland Reed?" Oberyn asked. Pycelle's eyes widened. "Reed?" he echoed. "The Crannogman?" He shook his head. No, that one vanishes. He comes to court rarely. He keeps to his swamps. There are no ravens from Greywater Watch that I've seen." Oberyn's fingers paused on a stack of correspondence tied with green ribbon. He pulled it free. The seal on the top letter was broken, the wax smeared, handled, read, discarded. He glanced at the signature and felt a spark of amusement. "Peter Baelish," Oberyn murmured. Pycelle's face tightened. "The Master of Coin," he said quickly. "Those are none of my business?" Oberyn finished, smiling. He slid the letter back into the stack, uninterested. Baelish's games were another kind of rot. Oberyn had no time to pick at them now. He turned back to Pycelle. "If you hear anything," he said, voice velvet over steel. "If any raven carries a hint about the tower, about the boy in black, you will send word to me." He lifted a candle and let wax drip onto the table, forming a crude pool. "If you don't," he set the candle down and watched the wax harden. "Then I will remember you when I am bored." Pycelle's face went gray. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, Prince." Oberyn nodded, satisfied. He turned to leave, then paused at the raven cages. The birds shifted, restless. "How many messages have you carried that killed men?" Oberyn asked the ravens softly, as if they might answer. The ravens stared back, black-eyed and silent. Ellaria fell into step beside him as they left the Maester's chamber. In the corridor, torchlight threw their shadows long against the stone. Somewhere above, laughter drifted from a hall where courtiers drank and pretended today had been entertainment rather than history. Ellaria's voice was low. "You believe Varys," she said. Oberyn did not answer at first. He walked, boots quiet on stone, mind racing. The pieces were thin, but they existed. Silence around a story was often more meaningful than words. "I believe," he said finally, "that he told me something dangerous." He glanced at her. "And I believe Tywin will not let me walk away with it." Ellaria's eyes narrowed. "Then we should go," she said. Oberyn's smile returned, sharp and bright. "Yes," he said. "We should." Outside, thunder rumbled over the city like a distant drum. King's Landing tried to celebrate when it should have mourned. The hall was hot with torches and bodies, loud with forced laughter. Wine flowed as if drowning could be made pleasant with sweet vintages. The king sat at the high table like a doll propped up for display, cheeks flushed from too much attention. Beside him, Tywin Lannister held court by existing, his presence heavy enough to bend the room. Oberyn Martell arrived as if he belonged there. He wore a dark red doublet sewn with tiny golden suns, his throat bare, his hands empty. Ellaria moved with him, and people made space without understanding why. Even drunk lords had instincts when a predator entered the room. Cersei Lannister smiled when she saw him, the kind of smile a cat gives a bird before it pounces. Her eyes were bright, too bright. Oberyn bowed to the king with impeccable politeness. "Your Grace," he said smoothly. Tommen stammered something polite back, looking to his grandfather for guidance. Tywin's gaze slid over Oberyn like a cold wind. No greeting. No acknowledgement beyond what was necessary. The hand was a man who did not waste warmth. Oberyn took his place among the honored guests and accepted a goblet. He lifted it in a careless salute to no one in particular and drank. The wine was good. That did not make it safe. Ellaria leaned close, her lips barely moving. "Your cup," she murmured. "You didn't watch it poured." Oberyn's smile did not change. "If they poison me," he murmured back, "I will be terribly offended." Illyria's eyes narrowed. "You should be alive to be offended," she said. Oberyn set the goblet down, fingers brushing the rim, scenting. He did not need to be obvious. He had lived too long among poisons to fear every cup. Fear made men clumsy. He let his gaze drift across the hall. There were familiar faces. Tyrells with their polished smiles, river lords with wary eyes, knights with hands always too close to swords. There were men whose names he did not know, whose faces were too plain to remember. And there, slipping between servants with a tray held too steady, was a man who moved like a blade trying to be a spoon. Oberyn's body did not tense. He let the moment come to him. The man passed behind a pillar, emerging closer. His hood was low, his hands hidden beneath the tray. No one else noticed. The music played. A fat lord laughed too loudly at a joke no one understood. Illyria noticed. She always noticed. Her fingers brushed the dagger at her thigh. Oberyn caught her wrist lightly, warning her to wait. The man came closer. The tray angled. The hood dipped. A flash of steel small, not a sword, not a dagger meant for honor, but a thin stiletto meant for ribs. Oberyn moved. He rose in a single fluid motion, turning as the blade came for his side. His hand caught the assassin's wrist, twisting hard. Bones popped. The stiletto clattered to the floor. The hall's noise stuttered, confusion rippling outward. Illyria surged forward, her own dagger drawn, and drove it into the assassin's thigh with brutal precision. The man screamed, a sharp, animal sound that finally cut through the music. A singer's note died in the air. Courtiers turned. Screams rose. Chairs scraped. Guards lunged too late. Oberyn held the assassin's wrist like a lover might hold a dance partner, and smiled into the man's hood. "Who sent you?" he asked softly, almost kindly. The assassin spat, blood mixing with wine on his lips. He tried to reach for something, perhaps poison in his mouth, perhaps another blade. Oberyn slammed his head into the table. Cups jumped. Wine spilled like fresh blood. The man went limp, still breathing, groaning. All eyes were on Oberyn now. Cersei stood, face pale with rage. "Seize him," she snapped, and the words cracked like a whip. Tywin did not move. His gaze stayed on Oberyn, on the assassin, on the spilled wine. Oberyn straightened, lifting his hands slightly as if to show he held no weapon. His smile was bright. "Your Grace," he called toward the dais, voice carrying easily over the chaos. "It seems your feast comes with entertainment." Tommen's eyes were wide. He looked ready to cry. "Grandfather!" Tywin lifted a hand, and the room obeyed. Even Cersei's fury paused at that gesture. "Prince Oberyn," Tywin said, voice calm. "Explain." Oberyn's eyes gleamed. "A man tried to stab me," he said simply. "I objected." Laughter flickered at the edges of the room, nervous and unsure. Tywin's gaze dropped to the assassin. "Who is he?" he asked. Oberyn shrugged. "No one," he said. "That's the point, isn't it? No one sent him. No one paid him. No one ordered it." His smile sharpened. "No one would dare." Cersei's face flushed. "You accuse." "I accuse nothing," Oberyn interrupted smoothly, turning to her. "I merely marvel at the dangers of your city." He gestured toward the assassin. "I'm sure your guards will find out who he is, unless—" He let the word hang like bait. Tywin's eyes narrowed a fraction. "Unless what?" he asked. Oberyn's gaze slid to Tywin, steady as a spear point. "Unless," he said softly, "it would be inconvenient." For a heartbeat, the hall held its breath. Tywin's mouth was a thin line. "Take the man," he ordered at last, and gold cloaks surged forward to drag the assassin away. The hood fell back as they hauled him, revealing a face too ordinary to hate. His eyes met Oberyn's, full of pain and fear. Oberyn watched him go without satisfaction. Assassins were arrows. The archer mattered. Cersei took a step toward Oberyn, jaw clenched. "You will not make a mockery of us," she hissed. Oberyn bowed slightly. "I would never mock you," he murmured. "You do such fine work yourself." Cersei's hand twitched as if she wanted to slap him. Tywin's gaze snapped to her. Cold warning, and she froze. Oberyn turned back to the table, picked up his goblet, and sniffed it again. He set it down untouched. Ilaria leaned close, voice low. "We leave," she said. Wyman's smile was almost gentle. "Yes," he murmured. "They have made their feelings clear." He looked once more at Tywin Lannister on the dais. The hand's face gave nothing, but in his eyes Oberyn saw something like calculation turning to urgency. Tywin had tried to remove a problem quietly. The problem had stood up in the middle of a feast and smiled. Oberyn lifted his empty hands, as if surrendering to the room. "My lords," he said lightly, "enjoy your wine." Then he walked out while the torches crackled and the hall watched him like men watching a spark fall into dry grass. Sunspear did not burn the way King's Landing burned. Its heat was older, steadier, a heat that lived in stone warmed by generations of sun and cooled by sea wind. The air smelled of salt and citrus. Even grief tasted different here. Prince Doran Nimrose Martell sat in his chair as if it were both throne and prison. His hands rested on the armrests, fingers slack, but his eyes were sharp. Pain lived in his legs. It made him still. Stillness made men underestimate him, which was a kind of armor. A scroll lay open on the marble table before him, sealed with Dornish wax, the seal broken in a careful way. The raven that had carried it cawed from its perch, as if impatient to be rid of the words. Oberyn Martell stood beside the table, dark hair braided and pinned with gold. Her jewelry caught the lantern light like small suns. She was beautiful in the way a blade could be beautiful, designed to be looked at and feared. Across from her, the sand snakes waited like a storm held back by walls. Obara's posture was a challenge. Nymeria's gaze was calculating. Tywin's smile was sweet enough to hide poison. Doran looked at them, then at his daughter. "Your uncle lives," he said quietly. Arianne's mouth twitched. "Of course he does," she said. "No one kills Oberyn Nimrose Martell unless he allows it." Nymeria's eyes flashed with pride. "He killed the mountain," she said. "In the lion's den." Obara's fist clenched. "And spoke Tywin Lannister's name in front of the whole court," she added. "That is worth 10 dead men." Doran's gaze returned to the letter. "He also writes of other things," he said. Arianne leaned in, reading over his shoulder. The lines were in Oberyn's hand. Quick, sharp strokes, as if the ink itself had been stabbed onto the page. "The confession," Arianne murmured. "He wants it witnessed, sealed." Her eyes lifted. "He wants to make it public." Doran nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "And he requests the mountain's head." Tywin smiled, almost dreamy. "A pretty gift," she said. "We could plant it in the gardens." Obara laughed harshly. "We could throw it at Casterly Rock and let the lions choke on it." Arianne's gaze slid back to the letter. Her brow furrowed. "There," she said, tapping the page. "This, he mentions, a boy in black." The sand snakes went still. Even Obara's restlessness paused. Doran's eyes stayed on the words. "He says," Doran murmured, "that there is a secret worth more than vengeance." Nymeria's smile was thin. "More than vengeance?" she repeated, amused. "Only a fool writes such nonsense." Doran glanced up at her. "Oberyn is not a fool," he said softly. "No," Arianne agreed, voice quieter now. "He is impulsive, but not foolish." She read again, lips moving. "A claim that cuts deeper than any blade," she quoted and looked up. "What claim?" Doran's fingers tapped the marble once. "If Oberyn is right," he said carefully, "then the realm story is wrong." Obara snorted. "The realm story is always wrong," she said, "written by men who win." Doran's gaze sharpened. "Yes," he said, And what if the men who won did not truly win? Arianne's heart beat faster. She could feel it in her throat. "You think he means a Targaryen," she said. Tyenne's smile widened. "Dragons," she sighed, as if the word itself was silk. Nymeria's eyes narrowed. "We have waited for dragons," she said. "Long enough for bones to pile up." Doran's face softened with old grief. "We waited because patience was all we had," he said. "We waited because war would have destroyed us." He looked at the letter again, at the quick strokes of his brother's hand. "Oberyn does not wait," he added quietly. "He takes." Arianne straightens. "And what will you do?" she asked, voice sharp. "Will you chain him here? Will you tell him to come home and be patient while King's Landing laughs behind their hands?" Doran's gaze flicked to her. "Do you think I enjoy patience?" he asked softly. "Do you think pain makes waiting pleasant?" He sighed. "But patience is not weakness. It is strategy." Obara stepped forward, eyes blazing. "Strategy did not save Princess Elia," she spat. "Strategy did not save her children. Strategy did not stop the mountain from crushing babies." The hall went cold at Elia's name. Even the orange trees outside seemed to hush. Doran's jaw tightened. "No," he said. "It did not." His voice did not rise, but there was steel beneath it. "And it will not happen again." Nymeria's eyes studied him. "Then let us act," she urged. "Send men. Raise spears. Put fire in the streets of King's Landing." Doran looked back at the letter, at the lines where Oberyn hinted at something he had not dared to write plainly. He thought of dragons and bastards and the wall, of snow so far from Dorne it might as well have been another world. He thought of Tywin Lannister, old and hard and proud. "Oberyn will return," Doran said at last. Arianne's eyes widened. "Return?" she echoed. "He's in danger there." "He will return if he chooses to," Doran corrected gently. "And if he does not, then we will know he has chosen a different road." He folded the letter slowly, as if trying to fold the future into a manageable shape. "We will not march blindly," he continued. "Not for a rumor, not for a whisper. We will learn the truth." Tyenne's eyes shone. "How?" she asked, voice sweet. Doran's gaze lifted to the raven perched nearby. "By sending our own whispers," he said. He looked at Nymeria. "You have friends in the Reach, in the capital." Nymeria smiled. "I have friends everywhere," she said. Doran looked at Obara. "You will go to the Boneway," he said. "Not to march yet, to watch, to be ready." Obara's grin was fierce. "Finally," she said. Doran looked at Tyene. "You will stay close," he said. "Close to me, close to Arianne. If Oberyn's road becomes war, we will need a gentle hand that can still kill." Tyene bowed her head. "As you wish," she said. Arianne's eyes stayed on her father. "And me?" she asked. Doran's gaze softened. "You will learn," he said. "You will listen. You will not let your blood outrun your mind." He paused, then added quieter. "And you will prepare to meet a story you did not expect." Arianne felt something stir in her. A mix of fear and excitement. A dragon in black. A claim that could unmake lions. Sounded like a song and a knife at once. Outside, the sea wind moved through the orange trees, and the leaves whispered as if they were trading secrets too. He did return, because sometimes the fastest way north was to first go home. The ship that carried Oberyn Martell from King's Landing cut through the narrow sea like a blade through cloth. He traveled with few men and no banners. A prince could hide in plain sight when he chose to, because men expected princes to arrive announced and loud. Oberyn arrived as a whisper. Sunspear greeted him with warm stone and salt wind. The city did not cheer the way King's Landing cheered, but the eyes that followed him were bright with hunger. They had heard the story already. The Red Viper had killed the mountain and lived. In taverns and courtyards, men spoke his name like a prayer for vengeance. Oberyn did not stop to soak in praise. He went straight to the private rooms where Dorne's true heat lived. Behind closed doors, over maps, over letters, over decisions that killed men from a distance. Ellaria Sand stood at his side as he bent over the table. The map of Westeros lay spread wide, pinned at the corners with daggers. Small stones marked keeps and ports. A line of red thread stretched from Sunspear to King's Landing, then north, then northeast toward the neck. Oberyn Martell leaned over the map too, eyes sharp. Oberyn Sand paced near the curtains like a caged animal. "You're taking this seriously?" Oberyn said, watching Oberyn's finger trace the line north. Oberyn's smile was thin. "I always take secrets seriously," he said. "They are the only honest currency." Oberyn snorted. "You should take war seriously," she said. "We could have marched the day you killed the mountain." Oberyn glanced up at her, amused. "And done what?" he asked. "Thrown ourselves against King's Landing's walls until our bones made a ramp?" Oberyn's eyes flashed. "Better bones than waiting," she snapped. Ellaria's voice cut in calm. "Better living," she said. "Better choosing when to bleed." Oberyn opened her mouth, then shut it, because Ellaria's calm had a way of making anger look childish. Oberyn returned his attention to the map. "We need proof," he said. "Not whispers, not Varys's pretty riddles. Proof we can hold in the open without being laughed at." Arianne's gaze narrowed. "You truly believe it," she said. "This boy." Oberyn's fingers paused. He looked at her, and for a moment the mask slipped, revealing something older and more fragile beneath. "I believe," he said quietly, "that there was a debt paid in blood in King's Landing, and that somewhere there might be a way to make that blood mean something other than grief." Arianne's throat tightened. She had never met Elia, not truly. She knew her only through stories and sadness. Oberyn carried Elia like a wound that had never closed. "And if you're wrong?" Arianne asked softly. Oberyn's smile returned, sharp. "Then I have wasted a ride north," he said. "I have done worse." Ellaria's hand rested on the small wooden box near the map, a box that held vials and powders and oils, neat as a maester's. Oberyn noticed and covered her fingers with his own for a moment. "A silent thank you for sharing this road." Arianne watched that, then looked away, as if intimacy were a kind of weakness she did not want to admit existed. "How do you plan to find proof?" she asked. Oberyn tapped the map at the neck. "Howland Reed," he said. Oberyn's pacing stopped. "A swamp lord," she scoffed. "You're going to ride into mud to ask a half-myth for a story?" Oberyn's eyes gleamed. "Yes," he said, delighted, "because myths are often the only men brave enough to tell truth." He looked at Arianne. "And because he was there." Arianne's brow furrowed. "At the tower," she murmured. Oberyn nodded. "Ned Stark did not go alone," he said. "The Crannogman went with him. If any man knows what happened, it is him." Oberyn made a rude sound. "And if he refuses?" she asked. Oberyn's smile sharpened. "Then I will persuade him," he said. Ellaria's eyes narrowed. "Oberyn," she warned softly. He glanced at her. "Not with threats," he said, almost gentle. "Not first." His gaze flicked back to the map. "We do this cleanly if we can. We don't become what we hate." Oberyn laughed harshly. "You're the one who poisons men," she said. "You're going to preach clean?" Oberyn's eyes turned cold. "Poison is honest," he said. "It does not pretend to be noble." He leaned closer to the map. "What I will not do is set Dorne on fire for a rumor. Not when winter is coming and the realm is already bleeding itself to death." Arianne's eyes sharpened. "Winter," she echoed. "You believe the stories from the north too?" Oberyn's mouth twisted. "I believe the north always suffers first," he said. "And when the north suffers, the rest of the realm eventually pays." He looked up at her. "If there is a king to be made, he must be more than a crown. He must be a shield." Arianne's pulse quickened. The idea was dangerous. It was also compelling. Oberyn slammed her fist lightly into her palm. "So we go," she said. "You me men. We drag truth out of swamps if we must." Oberyn shook his head. "No army," he said. "An army makes noise. Noise makes enemies. I will go with a small handful. He glanced at Obara. You will not come. You are too loud. Obara bristled. I can be quiet, she snapped. You cannot, Oberyn said, smiling again. It's why I love you. Arianne laughed despite herself, then sobered quickly. Father will allow this? She asked. Oberyn's eyes slid toward the door, toward where Doran sat behind his patients. He will not like it, he said, but he will not stop it. Not after the mountain. Not after the confession. Illyria's voice was low. And Tyrion Lannister? She asked. What of him? Oberyn's smile turned thoughtful. He lives, he said. That changes many things. He picked up one of the Raven scrolls, scanning it. His father will try to break him. His sister will try to kill him. If he is wise, he will run. Arianne's eyes widened slightly. To us? She asked. Oberyn sh. Rugged, the gesture careless. Perhaps, he said. Or perhaps to whatever corner of the world offers him spite and survival. He set the scroll down. Either way, a living Tyrion Lannister is a knife in Tywin's pride. Obara grinned. Good, she said. Illyria's gaze stayed on Oberyn. And you? She asked quietly. What are you? Oberyn looked at her, and for a moment the room softened. The surf outside the wall sighed, steady and eternal. I am a man who killed a monster, he said softly, and discovered that killing a monster does not bring back the dead. His fingers brushed her hand again. So I will do something else. Arianne watched him, feeling the weight of what he meant. A claim, a boy in black, a dragon hidden in snow, a chance to cut Tywin Lannister's story down to a footnote. Oberyn rolled up the map with quick, practiced hands and tied it with cord. We leave at dawn, he said. Obara's grin was feral. Arianne's stomach fluttered. Illyria's eyes were steady, full of love and dread. Outside, the sea wind rose, and Sunspear's torches burned lower, as if making room for the long shadow of the north. The world north of Dorne looked like it had been gnawed. The farther Oberyn rode from Sunspear's sun-warmed stone, the more the land showed its bones. Fields lay trampled. Orchards were hacked down for firewood. Villages that should have smelled of bread and manure smelled instead of smoke and wet ash. War had passed this way like a fever, leaving scars even where it had not killed outright. Oberyn rode with a small company. Men he trusted to keep their mouths shut, to keep their blades clean, to keep their eyes open. They wore plain cloaks over their armor and carried no bright banners. They looked like any other mercenaries or minor lord's men if you didn't look too closely. That was the point. Illyria rode at his side. She complained less than the road deserved. When she spoke, it was to point out a rider on a distant hill, a set of tracks too fresh, a place where the wind shifted and carried the smell of men instead of rain. You chose a bad time to travel, she said once, watching a line of refugees shuffle along the road like ghosts. Oberyn's eyes followed them. A woman held a child wrapped in rags. An old man limped beside a cart with a broken wheel. Their faces were gray with hunger and something worse. Resignation. There is never a good time, Oberyn said. Only times when men pretend things are fine. A child stared at him as he passed, eyes too big, mouth smudged with dirt. Oberyn reached into his saddlebag and tossed the boy a small pouch of dried fruit. The child caught it clumsily, stunned, then clutched it as if it were gold. Illyria watched Oberyn's face. You're soft today, she murmured. Oberyn's smile was faint. Don't spread that rumor, he said. It will ruin me. They rode on. In the Riverlands, the rain fell in cold sheets that soaked through cloaks and turned roads into sucking mud. Once, they passed a hamlet burned so thoroughly that only blackened posts remained, sticking up from the ground like ribs. A 7-pointed star hung crooked from one post, split down the middle. Someone had tried to pray and been answered with fire. One of Oberyn's men spat. Lannister work, he muttered. Or Stark, another replied, bitter. Or wolfmen or lionmen, all the same to the small folk. Oberyn listened without speaking. He had wanted the lions to bleed for years. He still wanted it. But seeing what the realm's bleeding did to people who had never sat on a council seat made him feel something complicated. Not pity, not mercy, something like responsibility, which annoyed him more than any insult. At an inn with a sagging roof, they stopped to water the horses and eat bread that tasted of damp. The innkeeper's eyes were wary. His hands shook as he poured ale. "Too many riders," the man muttered. "Too many swords. Every lord thinks the road belongs to him." Oberyn tossed him a coin. "Who owns it today?" he asked lightly. The innkeeper stared at the coin as if it might be poison. "No one," he said. "Or everyone. Wolves one day, lions the next. We hide the girls and the silver either way." Oberyn's smile tightened. "And the king?" he asked. The innkeeper snorted. "Which one?" he said. Illyria's eyes flicked to Oberyn. That, more than anything, was the realm now, confusion made into exhaustion, exhaustion made into surrender. Oberyn finished his bread and stood. "We go," he said. As they rode out, a rider approached from the north, cloak soaked, horse lathered. The man reined in hard, eyes scanning, then fixed on Oberyn. "Prince," the rider said, voice rough from cold. He spoke Dornish, which made Oberyn's men stiffen. Oberyn's eyes narrowed. "You're far from home," he said. The rider swallowed. "A message," he said, pulling a sealed scroll from inside his cloak. "From Sunspear, Prince Doran." Oberyn took it, broke the seal with a thumb. The parchment was damp at the edges, but the ink held. He read quickly. Doran's hand was careful, measured. The words did not command. They cautioned. They warned. They reminded Oberyn that Dorn's strength was in choosing when to strike. But at the bottom, in a final line that felt almost like a sigh, Doran wrote, "Bring me truth." Oberyn folded the letter and tucked it away. Illyria watched his face. "He didn't stop you," she said. "No," Oberyn murmured. "He sent a leash made of words." He smiled faintly. "It will not hold." They rode north again, into colder air. The trees changed. The ground grew softer. The sky stayed heavy. Ravens watched from branches like dark thoughts. At night, Oberyn dreamed of Elia. Not as she died, but as she lived, laughing softly at something he'd said. Her hands stained with ink, her eyes tired but kind. He woke with his throat tight and his jaw clenched. Illyria lay beside him under the blankets, warm despite the cold. "You're chasing ghosts," she whispered into the dark. "No," Oberyn murmured back. "I'm chasing a living thing." "And if it bites?" Illyria asked. Oberyn's smile was a shadow in the dark. "Then," he said softly, "I will bite back." The neck did not welcome strangers. It endured them. The land turned to water and mud and mist. Trees rose from black pools like drowned giants. The air was heavy, thick with rot and life. Every sound was too loud. The splash of a horse's hoof, the creak of leather, the low curse of a man bitten by insects. The fog curled around them in pale fingers, hiding what lay 10 paces away. Oberyn's horses hated it. They tossed their heads, ears flicking, nostrils flaring. His men muttered prayers under their breath. Even Obara would have been quiet here, and that thought amused Oberyn briefly before the swamp stole the humor away. They had not ridden into the neck by accident. They had been guided, watched, led in circles, tested. They saw no one, yet they felt eyes on them constantly, like needles in their skin. A branch snapped somewhere and a man's hand went to his sword hilt. Oberyn made a small gesture and the hand dropped again. There was no point in drawing steel against fog. At last, after days of damp and silence, they found the platform. It was a rough thing of wood lashed together above dark water. Not a castle, not a keep, a place that could be dismantled in an hour and vanish into the swamp as if it had never existed. Torches burned low along its edge, their flames hunched against the mist. The light reflected in the water in broken lines, making it look like the swamp held a shattered sky. Oberyn stepped onto the platform first, boots thudding on wet boards. Illyria followed, her hood up, eyes scanning. The men behind them hesitated, then came to. Nothing happened. Then the mist shifted. A figure emerged from the pale like a story becoming flesh. A man in a green cloak, his face lined, his eyes sharp. Behind him, others moved. Crannogmen, small and silent, holding spears that looked as if they had grown from the swamp itself. Their weapons were simple. Their posture was not. They stood like men who did not fear dying because death was just another part of the water. The man in the green cloak stopped a few paces away and studied Oberyn with the calm of someone measuring whether a snake was venomous enough to be worth killing. "Howland Reed," Oberyn said, letting the name settle into the air. The crannogman did not bow. "Prince Oberyn Martell," he replied, voice quiet. The words spoken as if they were a courtesy he offered and could take back at any moment. "You're far from your son." Oberyn smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. "And you're far from everyone," he said. "That's why I came." Howland Reed's gaze flicked to Ellaria, then to the men behind Oberyn. "You came with blades," he said. "I came with questions," Oberyn replied. "Blades are for people who refuse to answer." A soft murmur ran through the crannogmen. Howland's face did not change. "Most men who come here don't leave," he said. It was not a threat. It was a fact like weather. Oberyn's smile sharpened. "Most men who try to stop me don't remain whole," he said. Ellaria's hand touched his arm, a silent reminder to keep his temper leashed. Oberyn exhaled slowly and let the edge of the moment dull. Howland Reed stepped closer, boots silent on wet wood. "Speak," he said. "Your words have traveled ahead of you. A prince who killed the mountain." His eyes narrowed. "A prince who speaks Tywin Lannister's name with blood on it." Oberyn held his gaze. "I came for something older than Tywin," he said. Howland's eyes flickered, a tiny movement. "Older," he repeated. "The Tower of Joy," Oberyn said plainly. The swamp seemed to hush. Even the frogs quieted for a heartbeat. Howland Reed's face tightened, the first real crack in his calm. "Why?" he asked. "What business has Dorne with that place?" Oberyn's voice softened, and the softness carried the weight of memory. "Because a Dornish princess died screaming in King's Landing," he said. "Because her children died too. Because men think they ended a bloodline." He leaned forward slightly. "And because I have heard that perhaps they did not." Howland Reed stared at him a long moment. "You heard," he said. "From who?" Oberyn's smile returned, thin. "From a spider," he said. "From whispers. From the kind of truth that hides in dirty corners." Howland's gaze hardened. "Whispers," he repeated, and there was contempt in it. "Whispers kill. So does silence," Oberyn said. Howland Reed's eyes searched Oberyn's face, as if looking for something. Honor, perhaps, or hunger, or both. At last he spoke, voice quieter still. "Say his name," Howland said. Oberyn's throat tightened. He knew the name was bait and test. He also knew it was the hinge upon which a kingdom could swing. "Jon Snow," Oberyn said. The crannogmen shifted subtly, spears tightening in hands. Ellaria's breath caught. Howland Reed closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if bracing against pain. When he opened them again, they were wet. "He's not called that here," Howland said. Oberyn's pulse hammered. "Then what is he?" he demanded. Howland's gaze snapped up, sharp again. "Careful," he warned. "Words are not stones. They can drown you." Oberyn's smile was gone now. Only intensity remained. "Tell me," he said, voice low. "Tell me what you saw at the tower. Tell me what you promised. Tell me what Ned Stark carried out of that place besides grief." Howland Reed was silent so long Oberyn could hear water dripping from the torches into the swamp below. At last, the crannogman spoke, each word measured, chosen with the care of a man laying planks over deep water. "I saw a war end," Howland said, "and another begin." He looked at Oberyn. "I saw a woman dying. I saw a promise made in blood and tears." His throat worked. And I saw a child taken away so that men like Tywin Lannister could not put their hands on him. Oberyn's nails dug into his palm. Whose child? He pressed. Howland Reed's eyes met his. Lyanna Stark's, he said. Oberyn's breath hitched. And the father? Oberyn asked, though he already felt the answer circling like a vulture. Howland's voice was almost a whisper. Rhaegar Targaryen, he said. The name fell into the mist and did not echo. It did not need to. It was heavy enough to sink. Illyria's hand tightened on Oberyn's arm. He barely felt it. His mind flashed with images. Alya's smile, Alya's tears, Rhaegar's songs, a marriage, a betrayal, a war, blood spilled to right a lie. You're certain? Oberyn said, voice raw. Howland Reed's gaze did not flinch. I was there, he said simply. I helped carry the child away. I watched Ned Stark swear he would raise him as his own. He paused, eyes distant. He kept that vow. Oberyn closed his eyes for a heartbeat. He tasted iron, as if he'd bitten his tongue. When he opened them again, they burned. A dragon raised by a wolf, he murmured. Howland Reed watched him carefully. It was meant to keep the boy safe, he said, not to put him on a throne. Oberyn's laugh was sharp, bitter. Safe? He echoed. There is no safe, only hidden. He stepped closer, lowering his voice as if confiding. The realm is tearing itself apart. Your boy is sworn to the Night's Watch, freezing at the edge of the world while lions devour everything. His eyes narrowed. You think silence will protect him forever? Howland Reed's jaw tightened. Silence protected him this long, he said. And now winter comes, Oberyn said, and the words felt like prophecy. If he is to face what comes, he will need more than black wool and a vow. Howland Reed's gaze turned distant, as if seeing something beyond fog and swamp. You don't know what comes, he said. Oberyn's smile returned, not amused now but determined. Then tell me, he said, and I will bring the realm to meet it with a king who understands vows. Howland Reed studied him in silence. Then he nodded once, slow, reluctant. I will tell you what I can, he said. But know this, Prince. Truth is not a spear. You cannot simply point it at a man and expect him to fall. His eyes hardened. It will cut you too. Oberyn's grin was bright again, viper bright. Good, he said softly. I've never trusted any blade that doesn't. The torches hissed as mist thickened. The swamp croaked and breathed around them. And beneath the weight of the names spoken, Lyanna, Rhaegar, Jon, Oberyn Martell felt the shape of a future begin to rise, dark and dangerous, like something waking in deep water. Howland Reed's words lingered like smoke in the throat. Rhaegar Targaryen, Lyanna Stark, a child carried away from blood and grief. The mist seemed to thicken around the name, swallowing sound, forcing men to listen. Oberyn Martell did not move at first. He stood very still, as if any shift of weight might spill something precious. His mind was already racing, turning over the shape of the story, its edges sharp enough to cut. A dragon in black wool. A claim that made the Lannisters' victory feel suddenly fragile. And yet, beneath that, another current ran darker. Elia. His sister's name was not spoken on this platform, but she stood there anyway, invisible in the torchlight, looking at him the way she had looked at him the last time he'd made her laugh, tired, indulgent, fond. He remembered her hands, soft and clever, the way she had held her children as if the world might break them. He remembered the letters she had written from King's Landing, careful not to sound afraid. He remembered how they stopped. Oberyn's mouth tasted of iron. How, he said, voice low, do you say that name so easily? Howland Reed's gaze did not flinch. Because it is true, he answered. And truth does not change because it hurts. It should, Oberyn murmured. He forced his hands to unclench. Tell me the rest. Howland's eyes went distant, as if he were looking past the fog and water to stone in a far southern land. There were 7 of us who rode south, he said. Ned Stark and his friends. Boys, most of them. Men by necessity. We rode with grief and anger in our bellies, chasing a war that had already ended. Oberyn watched him closely. Every word was a key that might open a door or set off a trap. The Tower of Joy stood alone, Howland continued. White stone, bright in the sun. A beautiful thing. It should have been a place for songs. His mouth tightened. Instead it held 3 Kingsguard. At that, one of the crannogmen shifted, spear scraping softly on wet wood. The sound was small, but it made Oberyn's spine tighten.
Names Rose like ghosts. Ser Arthur Dayne, ser Gerald Gotover, ser Osvel vem.
Men whose loyalty had been legend. Men who had chosen a tower over a king. They were waiting, Howland said. Not afraid, not uncertain. Ser Arthur's blade was as calm as a priest's hand. Oberyn's fingers twitched, remembering Dawn's pale edge from stories told in Dorne, from songs sung by men who had never seen it and still loved it. And you fought them, he said. Howland nodded once, sharp. We fought, he said, and we died. His voice did not crack, but something in his eyes did. A tiny fracture that had never healed. 5 of Ned's men fell, then one, then another. He swallowed. It became simple. Blood and sand and steel. Oberyn could picture it too clearly. He had fought enough to know the way men stopped being names and became only targets and wounds. He had also been raised on stories. The Tower of Joy was a story that had been sealed shut like a tomb. Now the lid was lifting. Ned would have died, Howland said quietly. If not for me. Oberyn's gaze sharpened. You saved him, he said. I did what I could, Howland answered. I did what I had to. His eyes lifted, and there was a brief flash of something hard. And then the fighting ended, and Ned Stark went up the tower alone. Illaria's breath was a soft sound beside Oberyn. Oberyn didn't look at her. He couldn't. Not yet. How was she? Oberyn asked, and he hated how his voice softened. Lyanna. Howland Reed's eyes closed briefly. When he opened them, they were wet again. Dying, he said. The room smelled of blood and roses. Blue roses, Oberyn thought, though he did not say it aloud. He had heard the tale of the tourney at Harrenhal, the crown of winter roses placed in Lyanna Stark's lap. A gesture that had sparked a war and then been scrubbed clean in the telling. Blue roses were pretty. They should not smell like death. She held a child, Howland continued. A little thing, too small for what the world would demand of him. His jaw tightened. Ned knelt by her bed. She made him promise. Oberyn's throat tightened around the word promise. Promises were chains that could reach across oceans. What did she say? Oberyn pressed. The exact words. Howland's gaze found his. Protect him, he said. Keep him safe. Tell no one. Not even your wife. His voice dropped. And then she was gone. Silence swallowed the platform. The torches hissed and popped. Somewhere in the mist, an unseen creature croaked once, then quieted, as if it too sensed the weight of the moment. Oberyn exhaled slowly through his nose. Rhaegar Targaryen, he said again, tasting the name. So the prince steals my sister's crown, steals another woman, fathers a child, and then... His voice sharpened. Then my sister is slaughtered for Tywin Lannister's glory while his bastard lives. Howland's eyes turned flinty. He was not a bastard, he said. Oberyn's laugh was harsh. Then what was he? He snapped. A miracle? Prophecy? A mistake with a prettier name? Howland Reed did not rise to anger. He held steady, like a tree rooted in mud. He was a child, he said, and he is a man now. Whatever Rhaegar did, whatever you believe he did, does not belong on the boy's shoulders. Oberyn stared at him. The truth of that landed in him like a spear point. He wanted to reject it. He wanted to keep his fury simple, aimed, satisfying. But simplicity was a luxury kings and princes bought with other people's blood. Illaria's hand touched his forearm, light. Not restraining, reminding. Oberyn swallowed. Legitimacy, he said, forcing the word out. If you are asking me to help put him on a throne, then I need more than a dying girl's whisper. His gaze bored into Howland. Was there a marriage? Howland's jaw tightened. He looked away for the first time, toward the swamp where the mist hid everything. There was a ceremony, he said. Tea last. Not in a sept with bells and banners. Quiet. Hidden. His eyes returned to Oberyn. Under the old gods. Oberyn felt the world tilt slightly. Old gods, he repeated. Rhaegar was no northerner. No, Howland agreed. But Lyanna was, and she would not give him her body without vows. His voice was low now, guarded. Rhaegar swore them. And Elia? Oberyn asked, and the name was a blade. His wife. Howland's face tightened with something like regret. I do not know what was done in the south, he said. I did not sit in the High Septon's chair. I did not hold the king's seal. He paused. I only know what I saw, what I heard. Vows spoken. Hands joined. A child called legitimate. Oberyn's eyes burned. Legitimate. The word was supposed to mean safety. It had meant nothing to Elia's children when the mountain's hands found them. He held Howland's gaze. You understand, he said softly. What you are giving me. Howland Reed nodded once. A knife, as you said, he replied. Sharp enough to cut the realm open. Oberyn's smile returned, slow and dangerous. Good, he murmured. Then we will need a steady hand. Howland gestured with a small movement of his fingers. The crannogmen shifted, opening a narrow path along the platform. Not here, Howland said. Not where fog carries sound. Come. Oberyn glanced once at Ellaria, saw her eyes steady, then followed Howland Reed into the mist, toward the hidden heart of Greywater and the deeper parts of the truth. The hut was built the way the neck built everything. Low, practical, prepared to disappear. The ceiling was close enough to smell the wet wood. The floor was packed earth covered by rushes that softened footsteps. Oil lamps burned with a steady glow, their light warm but not kind. Water dripped from cloaks onto the ground, leaving dark spots that spread like bruises. Howland Reed sat across from Oberyn and set a small bundle on the table, wrapped in oilcloth and tied with thin cord. His fingers lingered on it as if it were something sacred. Oberyn's dagger lay flat before him, not threatening, merely honest. Ellaria stood behind his shoulder, arms folded, eyes never leaving Howland's hands. You want proof, Howland said. I want something that survives more than breath, Oberyn replied. Words men lie. Paper is harder to kill. Howland's mouth tightened. Paper is easier to steal, he said. Easier to burn. Easier to twist. He looked at Oberyn. You think Tywin Lannister cannot buy ink? Oberyn's smile flickered. Tywin buys everything, he admitted. But even he cannot buy a dead man's conscience. He leaned forward. Give me something he cannot unmake. Howland untied the cord slowly, then peeled back the oilcloth. Inside lay a strip of faded cloth, pale and thin, with dark stains that might once have been blood. A small knot of blue petals rested beside it, pressed flat and brittle. A blue rose, Oberyn thought again, and for a moment it was not political at all, it was simply sad. A dead flower that had once been alive in a young girl's hand. Howland touched the cloth. This was wrapped around him, he said, voice quiet. Around the child. Lyanna's hands were too weak to hold him. Ned lifted him, and the cloth stuck to her fingers. She wouldn't let go until Ned promised. Oberyn's throat tightened. He reached out, stopped himself. He was not a man to fear blood, but this felt different. Too intimate for a prince who loved spectacle. He let his hand hover, then finally touched the edge of the cloth with one finger. It was rough, worn, more ordinary than any legend deserved. And this? Oberyn asked, nodding at the petals. Howland's eyes softened. From the bed, he said. Ned took it not for songs, but to remember what the room smelled like, so he could never pretend it was a dream. He swallowed. He gave it to me later, when he knew I understood why memory matters. Ellaria's breathing was steady, but Oberyn felt her presence tighten, as if she could sense the knife edge between grief and ambition. "Is there anything written?" Oberyn asked. Howland's gaze sharpened. "There was," he said. Oberyn's pulse quickened. "Where?" he demanded. "How do you think I've lived this long?" Howland replied, "By keeping it from men who ask questions with daggers on their tables." He nodded toward Oberyn's blade. Ned Stark burned what could be burned. He hid what could not. He did not trust paper. Oberyn's mouth tightened. "Then your proof is cloth and a flower," he said, and there was frustration in it, though he tried to keep it buried. Howland's eyes hardened. "My proof is me," he said, "and the promise I made, and the gods who heard it." He leaned in. "You want a seal?"
A signature?
"So you can wave it in a council chamber and force men to clap?" His voice turned sharp. "Men will call it forgery. They will call it trickery. They will call it Dornish poison." Oberyn's smile was thin. "They already call everything Dornish poison," he said softly. Howland nodded once. "Then you know," he said, "the only proof that matters in Westeros is power." Oberyn sat back, the truth of it bitter and familiar. He had spent his life watching men twist reality to suit their swords. The gods could speak and still be argued with. Even a corpse's confession could be dismissed if the right man sneered. "How do we make them believe?" Oberyn asked quietly. Howland's eyes flicked to the door, as if checking that only swamp and loyal spears listened. "By choosing your moment," he said. "By choosing your witness." He paused. "And by choosing your boy." "My boy," Oberyn echoed, amused despite himself. Howland's expression did not soften. "He is not yours," he said. "That's the point. He is not Dorne's weapon. He is not your revenge." His gaze held Oberyn's. "If you use him like one, you will break him, and you will break the realm." Oberyn's eyes narrowed. "Do you think I don't know what breaking looks like?" he asked, voice low. Howland's face tightened with something like understanding. "I think you know it well," he said. "That is why I agreed to speak to you at all." Elaria stepped closer, her voice calm. "He will not use him blindly," she said. Howland's eyes flicked to her. "You trust him," he said. Ilaria's mouth curved faintly. "I love him," she corrected. "Trust is what you do when love isn't enough." Oberyn's smile softened for a heartbeat, then hardened again as the world demanded its due. "What about the ceremony?" Oberyn asked, returning to the blade of the matter. "Under the old gods, you said vows were spoken." Howland nodded slowly. "A weirwood grove," he said, "far from eyes." Rhaegar came in a plain cloak. No harp, no crown. Just a man who believed the world required him to do something monstrous for the sake of what he called destiny. His mouth tightened. Lyanna demanded vows. He gave them. "And witnesses?" Oberyn pressed. Howland's gaze lowered. "Me," he said, "and a woman who served as midwife and prayed to trees instead of septs." He paused. "And the gods." Oberyn's jaw clenched. "No septon," he said, frustration bleeding through. "No high septon's record. No legal." His voice trailed off. Howland's eyes were sharp. "Legal," he said with quiet contempt. As if legality saved anyone. He leaned forward. "Prince Oberyn, you want a throne. Do you think thrones are made by law?" Oberyn's lips parted, then closed. He knew the answer. He hated the answer. "Oh, do I speak to him?" Oberyn asked at last. "Jon Snow. If I ride to the wall and tell him he is a dragon, he will think it a trap. Or madness." Howland Reed was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into the bundle again and pulled out something small and hard. A ring of plain gold, worn thin, its surface scratched. No sigil, no ornament. It looked like nothing. That made it terrifying. "This," Howland said softly, "was on Rhaegar's finger when he swore his vows." He set it on the table. Ned took it from Lyanna's hand. He did not want it. He did not want any reminder of what the prince had done. But he kept it anyway. Howland's voice tightened. He gave it to me when he understood I might be the only man who would ever need to prove he wasn't mad. Oberyn stared at the ring. Plain, unremarkable. And yet, if the story was true, it was a piece of a fallen prince's life. Illyria's eyes narrowed. Why give it now? She asked Howland. Howland's gaze stayed on Oberyn. Because you will go to the wall, he said. And because the boy deserves to know what he is before other men decide what he should be. He paused. And because if the realm needs a king, it should not be made by liars alone. Oberyn's fingers closed around the ring. It was cold, even in the warm lamplight. He felt its weight settle into his palm like a decision. If I take this, Oberyn said quietly, I cannot put it back. Howland Reed's eyes were sad. No, he said, you cannot. Oberyn looked at the ring a long time. Then he slid it into a small pouch at his belt with the carefulness of a man handling poison. Then I will go, he said. Howland nodded once. And when you speak to him, he said, tell him this, Ned Stark loved him enough to become a liar. Oberyn's throat tightened. He nodded because there were some truths even vipers could not bite through. Outside the hut, the swamp breathed. Mist curled through the trees like pale smoke from an unseen fire. The boardwalk beneath Oberyn's boots was narrow and slick, a path of rough planks laid over dark water. It felt like walking on a promise made too long ago. One wrong step and you disappeared. Illyria kept pace beside him. Her hood was up, her face half-shadowed, but her eyes were clear. She did not speak at first. She waited until the lamps behind them were distant and only the swamp's sounds remained. You're angry, she said quietly. Oberyn's mouth tightened. I am always angry, he replied. It was meant to be a jest. Came out like an admission. Illyria's hand touched his arm. Steady. No, she said. This is different. She glanced at him. It's Elia. The name struck like a bell. Oberyn's throat tightened. He kept walking because stopping would mean letting the grief catch him. He dishonored her, Oberyn said at last, voice low. Rhaegar. The bitterness in the name was fresh, surprising even him. If he swore vows to another woman while my sister lived, if he made a child with Lyanna while Elia was left behind, then... He shook his head sharply. Then the realm's songs are uglier than I imagined. Illyria's voice was gentle, which made it dangerous. The songs were always ugly, she murmured. We just didn't always hear the screams under the melody. Oberyn's fingers brushed the pouch at his belt. The ring inside felt heavier than gold. Felt like a burden men would kill for. And yet you will still help the child, Illyria said. Oberyn's laugh was thin. He is not a child, he said. If he lives at the wall, he is a man hardened by cold and duty. He slowed slightly, looking out into the mist. But yes, he admitted, I will help him. Illyria studied him. Why? She asked. Because it hurts the lions? Oberyn's smile flickered. That is a pleasant bonus, he said. Not enough, Illyria pressed. Oberyn stopped walking. The boardwalk creaked softly beneath his boots. Mist drifted around them, muffling the world. Somewhere in the reeds, a frog croaked, then fell silent, as if aware it had spoken out of turn. Oberyn looked at Illyria. Because, he said slowly, Elia's children are dead. Their claim is ash. Tywin Lannister wants the realm to forget that he paid for their deaths. His eyes hardened. If I can place a crown on a head that forces the realm to remember, then Elia's name becomes law, not only grief. Illyria's gaze softened. You want justice, she said. Oberyn's mouth twisted. I want the closest thing men can manage, he said. I want Tywin Lannister's legacy to rot. He exhaled. And I want something that means Elia did not die for nothing. Illyria's hand slid into his, warm against his cold fingers. She didn't, she said softly, but I know what you mean. Oberyn squeezed once, grateful and furious at the same time. Howland Reed thinks I will break the boy, he said. Illyria's mouth curved faintly. Howland Reed is wise, she said. Oberyn huffed a breath that might have been a laugh. Yes, he admitted, which is why it annoys me. Illyria's eyes narrowed. Then don't break him, she said simply. Oberyn looked at her. The simplicity of it made his chest ache. He had broken men before. He had broken them with poison, with knives, with words. He had broken them because he could. He had told himself it was justice or pleasure or both. Breaking Jon Snow would be easier than convincing him, and it would ruin everything. Oberyn nodded once, slow. I won't, he said. Illyria's expression held him. Say it like you mean it, she murmured. Oberyn's jaw clenched, then loosened. I won't, he repeated, and this time it sounded like a vow. They began walking again. How will you approach him? Illyria asked. Oberyn's eyes flicked ahead, to where the boardwalk vanished into fog. Carefully, he said, not as a prince demanding obedience, as a man carrying a truth that could kill him if spoken too loudly. His mouth tightened. And I will offer him something he understands. Illyria waited. Duty, Oberyn said. Not crowns, not vengeance. Duty. He glanced at her. And I will tell him that if he does nothing, men worse than me will decide his fate. Illyria's face tightened. And your brother? She asked. Prince Doran. Oberyn's gaze turned distant for a heartbeat. Doran's patience was a stone wall, protective, suffocating, necessary. He must know, Oberyn said, but not in a way that can be stolen. He paused. We will send a raven with only enough to make him ready. Nothing he can show a court. Illyria's eyes narrowed. And Varys? She asked. Oberyn's smile sharpened. The spider will know I'm moving, he said. He always knows. He shrugged. Let him. If he wants this, he'll protect the thread. If he doesn't, then the thread was never safe. Illyria's hand tightened in his again. You are playing with kings, she murmured. Oberyn looked at the mist, at the swamp that could swallow any man and leave no bones. No, he said softly. I am playing with stories. His eyes burned. And stories are what make kings. Ahead, a crannogman appeared soundlessly, pointing the way off the boardwalk toward firmer ground. The gesture was not welcoming. It was permission. Permission could be revoked. Oberyn stepped toward it without hesitation. The pouch at his belt shifted. The ring inside pressed against his hip like a reminder. Somewhere far north, a young man in black stood at the edge of the world, unaware that his name was about to change. Leaving the neck felt like waking from a fever into a different kind of sickness. The mist thinned, and the trees changed. The swamp's wet rot gave way to pine and cold earth. The road hardened beneath hoof, though it remained slick with rain and the first flurries of snow that drifted down like ash. Oberyn's men were quieter now. Even the most talkative among them had learned that the north listens differently. The land itself seemed to judge every footfall. Illyria rode close, her cloak pulled tight. Her cheeks were reddened by wind, her eyes narrowed against the cold. Oberyn's breath steamed in the air, a strange sight for a man of Dorne. Your son feels far away, she murmured once. Oberyn's smile was faint. It will return, he said. It always does. But the words tasted like a lie in this gray light. They were not alone. Oberyn had felt eyes on them since the moment they left Greywater's hidden paths. Not the watchful curiosity of crannogmen, but something sharper, hungrier. Men who watched to measure what you were worth dead. The first sign was the wolf. It hung from a branch over the road, a carcass stiff with cold, its fur matted with blood, its head lolled to one side, tongue dark. Around its neck, someone had tied a strip of flayed skin like a crude ribbon. A warning. Oberyn's jaw tightened. Bolton? One of his men muttered, spitting into the mud. Illyria's hand moved toward her dagger beneath her cloak. Oberyn made a small gesture, stilling her. Not yet, he murmured. The forest was thick here. Pine boughs caught snow and drooped heavy. Shadows clung between trunks. A man could disappear a dozen paces away and never be seen again. Then they saw movement. Gray shapes between trees. Men in dull cloaks, their armor more practical than polished. Spears, crossbows, and stitched onto one cloak the pale outline of a flayed man on pink. Oberyn kept his pace steady. He did not reach for his weapon. He did not allow tension to stiffen his posture. Predators smelled fear. A voice called from the trees. "Hold!" Oberyn reined in, slow. His men did the same, horses snorting. Illyria's gaze swept the shadows. A man stepped out, cloak damp, face rough with beard. He wore a pink strip at his belt like a badge. His eyes moved over Oberyn and lingered, recognition flickering. Not of the face. Oberyn could be any dark-haired lord if you didn't know his smile, but of the way he held himself. "Who travels?" the man demanded. Oberyn lifted his chin slightly. "Merchants," he said in the common tongue, letting a hint of southern accent slip through. "Bound for White Harbor." The scout's eyes narrowed. "Merchants with swords," he said. "Bad roads," Oberyn replied lightly. "Hungry men." The scout spat. "All men are hungry," he said. His gaze flicked to Illyria. "And women too, it seems." Illyria's smile was polite and cold. "Very hungry," she murmured. Oberyn felt the tension rise. The scout did not appreciate being looked at like prey. "White Harbor is under the Dreadfort's watch," the man said. "And Winterfell's." Oberyn's mouth curved faintly. "Winterfell is ashes," he said, as if idly commenting on the weather. The scout's eyes flashed. "Careful," he warned. Oberyn spread his hands slightly. "Only truth," he said. The scout stepped closer, close enough that Oberyn could smell damp wool and old sweat. "Names," the man said. "Give yours." Oberyn held his gaze. "Oren," he said, a half-name, a lie that almost fit. The scout's eyes narrowed further. He looked at Oberyn's hands, at the quality of his gloves, at the cut of his cloak. His gaze slid to the horses, noticing they were well-bred despite the mud. He was not clever, but he was not blind. "Southern," the scout said. "Born under sun," Oberyn agreed. The scout's mouth twisted. "Sun doesn't belong here," he said. Oberyn smiled, and the smile was dangerous. "Then it is lucky I do not belong here either," he replied. For a heartbeat, the forest held still. Oberyn could feel his men behind him tensing. Ready. Illyria's breathing remained even, but her hand was close to her blade. The scout's eyes darted, measuring. There were more of them in the trees than Oberyn had men, but Bolton men were cautious. They had learned that numbers did not always win. They also had orders, and Oberyn did not know what those orders were. At last, the scout stepped back. "Go," he said grudgingly. "But if you lie," Oberyn's smile widened. "Then you will flay me?" he offered, almost cheerful. The scout's face tightened. He looked away first, signaling his men with a sharp gesture. Gray shapes melted back into the trees. Oberyn nudged his horse forward. As he passed the scout, he spoke softly, in a voice only the man could hear. "Tell your master," Oberyn murmured, "that vipers do not die quietly." The scout stiffened, eyes widening. Recognition struck late. Too late to stop him now without admitting fear. Oberyn rode on, leaving the forest behind like a bad memory. Illyria leaned closer. "That was foolish," she murmured. Oberyn's smile was thin. "Yes," he admitted, "but satisfying." Illyria's eyes narrowed. "Satisfaction gets you killed," she said. Oberyn's fingers brushed the pouch at his belt. The ring inside felt colder now, as if reminding him that death was always nearby. "Not today," he said quietly. Ahead, the road opened toward White Harbor, toward ships and salt wind, and the next step toward the wall. Behind them, in the pines, the Boltons watched, and Oberyn could almost feel the raven wings of news already flapping south. White Harbor smelled like the sea and like money. After the forests and mud, the city's stone walls looked almost clean, its streets less broken, its docks busy even under gray skies. Ships moved in the harbor like dark teeth. Gulls cried overhead, bold as thieves. The salt wind cut through cloaks and carried the scent of fish, tar, and smoke. Oberyn had not announced himself. He had entered as Oberyn the merchant and moved through the city with a small retinue, asking questions in taverns, listening to the way Northerners spoke of their new rulers with clenched teeth. The Boltons were mentioned rarely, and never with warmth. The Freys were mentioned like disease. When Oberyn finally requested audience, he did so through the right doors, quiet ones, using coin and the kind of certainty that made men ask fewer questions. Lord Wyman Manderly received him in a private chamber in the new castle, away from the bright halls where polite lies were performed. Here, the air was thick with candle smoke and parchment. Maps lay scattered across a heavy table. Ledgers and letters sat in neat piles like soldiers ready for orders. Wyman Manderly himself was vast, his body filling the chair as if the chair were trying to remember what it meant to be furniture. He wore green and silver, his fingers thick with rings. His eyes, however, were sharp and bright, the eyes of a man who had survived by pretending to be softer than he was. "Prince Oberyn," Wyman said, voice warm as honey. "Or should I say, Merchant Oberyn?" Oberyn lowered his hood and smiled. "My lord," he said smoothly, "a pleasure. I find your city bracing." Wyman's mouth curved. "We have fewer snakes than King's Landing," he said, "but we do our best." Ilaria stood beside Oberyn, quiet, her gaze taking in the room, the guards, the exits. Ser Wylis Manderly lingered in the back, a broad-shouldered man with a face that held more caution than expression. Wyman steepled his thick fingers. "To what do I owe this surprise?" he asked. "Dorne sends few visitors so far north, and fewer still without banners." Oberyn leaned lightly on the table, casual. "Banners attract arrows," he said, "and I've had enough attempts on my life for one season." Wyman's eyes gleamed. "Ah," he said, "the Red Viper who killed the mountain and lived. My halls have heard the song already." His gaze sharpened. "Songs travel fast. Truth travels slower." Oberyn's smile held. "Then I've come to hire a ship," he said. "Ships travel faster than truth." Wyman chuckled softly, a sound that did not reach his eyes. "To where?" he asked. Oberyn met his gaze steadily. "To the wall," he said. The warmth in the room cooled. Ser Wylis shifted slightly. The guard at the door stiffened. Wyman's smile remained, but his eyes narrowed. "The Night's Watch," he said. "An odd destination for a Dornish prince. Do you intend to freeze for sport?" Oberyn's smile sharpened. "I intend to speak to a man," he said. "A man your people whisper about." Wyman's gaze did not move. "Many men wear black," he said. "Jon Snow," Oberyn said. A quiet fell that felt deliberate, like a door being closed. Wyman's fingers tapped once on the table. "Why?" he asked, and the single word held 1,000 cautions. Oberyn did not answer immediately. He could feel the trap in the air. The North was wounded. The North was suspicious. The North had been betrayed too many times to accept a Southern prince's smile without searching for teeth beneath it. "I have a truth," Oberyn said at last. "That concerns House Stark." Wyman's eyes sharpened further. "House Stark is ashes," he said softly. Oberyn's smile did not falter. "Ashes can still burn," he replied. Wyman leaned back slightly, the chair creaking under him. He studied Oberyn for a long moment, then glanced briefly at Ilaria, at the way she stood. Ready, steady, unafraid. "Truth," Wyman said again, tasting the word. "That is a dangerous thing to carry." He paused, then added, voice lower, "Especially in the North, where men kill for lies and call it honor." Oberyn's eyes burned. "In the South," he said, "men kill for lies and call it politics." Wyman's mouth curved faintly. "A fair point," he conceded. He leaned forward again. "If you want a ship, you can have one," he said. "White Harbor sends supplies to Eastwatch and Castle Black. We are loyal to the Watch." His eyes narrowed. "But I will not be dragged into Southern games." Oberyn held his gaze. "This is not only Southern," he said quietly. "The realm is bleeding. Winter is coming. You know that better than most." Wyman's eyes flickered at the mention of winter, and something old and hard stirred there. "We know," he said softly. Oberyn leaned in slightly, lowering his voice so only Wyman and the stones could hear. "I can bring you a chance," he said. "A chance to make the men who murdered your king pay. A chance to restore something that was stolen." Wyman's expression remained pleasant. "You speak like a man selling a dream," he said. Oberyn's smile turned thin. "Dreams are the only things men still buy," he replied. Wyman's gaze held his for a long moment. Then the fat lord exhaled slowly, as if releasing a breath he had been holding since the Red Wedding. "The North remembers," Wyman said quietly. Oberyn's smile softened, just a fraction. "So does Dorne," he said. Wyman's eyes gleamed. "Then perhaps," he murmured, "we can remember together." He lifted a thick hand and tapped the table once. "I will give you passage," he said, quietly. "No banners, no announcements." His gaze sharpened. "But if you bring trouble to my harbor." Oberyn's smile returned, sharp. "Trouble follows me," he said, "but I try to keep it from harming innocent men." Wyman chuckled softly. "Innocent men," he repeated, as if amused by the concept. Then he sobered. "When you reach the wall," he said, "tell Jon Snow," he paused, eyes narrowing. "Tell him that the North is not dead. Not yet." Oberyn held that gaze, and nodded once. Outside the shutters, the sea wind howled, and somewhere in the harbor a bell rang as a ship shifted against its moorings, readying itself to carry secrets toward the edge of the world. The sea was a different kind of cold. It did not press down like the swamp's damp weight. It cut. It found gaps in cloaks and slid into bones. The ship that Wyman Manderly provided was sturdy, broad-beamed, built to carry barrels and grain and salted meat to hungry men on the wall. Its deck was slick with spray. Its rigging creaked like old joints. Oberyn stood near the mast, cloak pulled tight, watching White Harbor shrink behind them until it became only a smudge of stone and smoke beneath a low sky. Ellaria stood close, her face turned into the wind, eyes narrowed against salt. "This is madness," she murmured, voice almost lost to the gusts. Oberyn's smile was faint, teeth flashing briefly. "Most worthwhile things are," he said. In his hand he held a scrap of parchment. He had written words on it below deck, by lantern light, words meant for Jon Snow, measured, careful, offering truth like a blade wrapped in cloth. Then he had stared at the ink and realized no letter could carry the weight without being twisted. He had crumpled it, smoothed it, crumpled it again. Now the parchment was soft and bruised like an old secret. Ellaria glanced at it. "You can't write it," she said. "No," Oberyn agreed. He stared out at the water. "If a raven falls into the wrong hands, the boy dies." Ellaria's eyes tightened. "And if you tell him, men will try to kill him anyway." Oberyn's smile sharpened. "Yes," he said softly, "but if I tell him, he can choose how to live with it." A sailor passed, hauling rope, eyes flicking curiously to the southern lord who stood so calm beneath the cold. Oberyn met the man's gaze and smiled. The sailor looked away quickly, as if recognizing a predator despite not knowing its name. A raven cage sat lashed near the mast, the bird inside ruffling its feathers in irritation at the sea air. Oberyn watched it with a thoughtful look. "I should send word to Doran," he murmured. Ellaria's mouth tightened. "Without names," she reminded. Oberyn nodded. He could see his brother in his mind. Doran's stillness, the pain in his legs, the patience that was not weakness but endurance. Doran would want more than whispers. Oberyn could not give him more yet. He would give him a direction. Below deck that night, amid the smell of tar and salt and wet wool, Oberyn wrote a short message on clean parchment. No mention of dragons, no mention of Lyanna or Rhaegar, only this: the wolf has more teeth than the realm believes. Prepare your spears for winter, not for summer war. Trust the messenger I send, not the spider. He sealed it with plain wax, pressing it with the flat of his ringless hand. No martel seal, no mark that could condemn Dorne if intercepted. The captain agreed to release the raven when they were far enough from shore that no curious gull could follow it back. Oberyn watched the bird disappear into the gray sky like a thrown secret. Days blurred. The sea changed from choppy to angry. Wind hammered the sails. The ship pitched and rolled until even hardened sailors cursed the gods. Ellaria grew pale, gripping the rail with stubborn determination. Oberyn held her once, bracing her against a wave, his gloved hand firm at her waist. "You should have stayed in Dorne," he said quietly. Ellaria's laugh was thin. "And miss watching you freeze?" she murmured. "Never." On the fourth night, the clouds broke for a few hours and the stars appeared, cold, sharp points over a black sea. Oberyn stood alone at the bow, letting the wind sting his cheeks. He thought of King's Landing. He thought of Tywin's eyes. He thought of Cersei's fury. He thought of Varys in his tunnels, smiling as he placed a match near a powder barrel. He wondered briefly if the spider had meant for him to die on this journey, not by assassin but by cold, by distance, by the quiet erasure of a man who had become inconvenient. Then he touched the pouch at his belt and felt the ring there, steadied him. If men wanted him erased, then he must be carrying something worth protecting. On the horizon at dawn, a line appeared, white against the sky. At first it looked like cloud. Then it sharpened into something impossible. The wall. Even from miles away, it made the world feel smaller. A pale, towering scar across the land, catching the weak sun and throwing it back like ice fire. Sailors crossed themselves. One muttered a prayer to the seven. Another spat and called it a thing built by giants. Oberyn stared at it, silent. He had lived his life under sun that warmed stone until it sang. Now he looked at a wall of ice that could swallow a city, and for the first time he understood why Northerners spoke of duty the way Dornishmen spoke of blood. Ellaria stepped beside him, eyes wide despite herself. "It's," she began. "Too big," Oberyn finished softly. The ship creaked as it cut through darker water toward Eastwatch-by-the-Sea, toward black-clad men and cold vows and the boy who did not know he was the hinge of a kingdom. Oberyn crumpled the half-written letter in his hand one last time, then tossed it into the sea. The parchment fluttered, caught a gust, and vanished into the waves like a lie finally let go. Eastwatch-by-the-Sea was all splinters and stubbornness. The dock groaned under the weight of barrels and men. Sea spray froze on the rails, leaving a sheen that turned every step into risk. The air tasted like salt and iron. Above everything, the wall rose like a white cliff, close enough here that it seemed to blot out the sky. Black-clad men waited on the dock, faces weathered, eyes wary. The Night's Watch did not greet strangers with warmth, not even those bearing supplies. Warmth was for fires and memories. At their front stood Cotter Pike, broad-shouldered, his beard rimed with frost. His cloak was black, damp and patched, but he wore it like a banner anyway. His eyes were hard, like a man who had learned that kindness got you killed faster than cold. Oberyn stepped off the ship and felt the docks frozen wood under his boots. The wind tore at his cloak, snapping it like a whip. Ellaria followed, her face drawn, her cheeks red from the cold. Cotter Pike's gaze swept over them. "We weren't told to expect silk," he said flatly. Oberyn smiled, the expression bright against the gray. "Silk is a habit," he said. "I can shed it if it offends you." Cotter's eyes narrowed. "Name," he said. Oberyn did not bother lying. "Not here, not with the wall looming and watchmen watching." "Oberyn Martell," he said, and his voice carried despite the wind. A murmur ran through the Black brothers. They had heard songs too. The Red Viper, The Mountain, King's Landing, a southern prince who fought like a demon and smiled while doing it. Cotter Pike's eyes narrowed further. "Dorne," he said, as if tasting something strange. "What's a Dornish prince want at the end of the world?" "To speak," Oberyn said. "To listen. To pay respects to men who guard the realm while the realm forgets them." Cotter snorted. "Pretty words," he said. "The watch doesn't eat pretty words." Oberyn gestured toward the barrels being unloaded. "It will eat salted meat," he said, "and I'll pay for more if you let me speak to the man I came to see." Cotter's gaze sharpened. "Who?" he demanded. "Jon Snow," Oberyn said. The murmur grew louder. A few men spat. Others looked curious. Jon Snow was known here. He was also a name that stirred opinion, admiration in some, resentment in others. Cotter Pike's mouth twisted. "He's at Castle Black," he said. "You want him, you go there." "I intend to," Oberyn replied. Cotter's eyes flicked to Ellaria, then back. "And you brought a woman," he said. "We don't take women." Ellaria's smile was thin. "I'm not asking to take your vows," she said. "Only your road." Cotter Pike studied her for a long moment, then looked at Oberyn again. "If you bring trouble," he said, "I'll throw you in the sea and let the cold judge you." Oberyn's grin flashed. "I respect a man who speaks plainly," he said. Cotter made a sharp gesture. Two black brothers stepped forward, one holding a lantern, the other gripping a spear. "You'll have an escort," Cotter said. "Not because you're important, but because strangers get lost out here and then we have to fetch their bones." Oberyn dipped his head. "How thoughtful," he said. They began the trek along the base of the wall, following a path packed hard by boots and sleet. The wall loomed to their right, its surface blue-white and veined with darker lines like frozen rivers. In places, ladders rose to the top, and men in black moved like ants against the vastness. Oberyn kept glancing up despite himself. He could not help it. The wall was obscene in its scale, a monument to fear and determination both. It made castles seem like toys. Ellaria walked close, her breath visible. "You're staring," she murmured. "How can I not?" Oberyn replied softly. "My whole life, I thought the world ended at the sea." He glanced at her. "It seems it ends here instead." They passed abandoned watchtowers half buried in snowdrift, their stones cracked, their gates hanging loose. The escort did not slow. "Too few men," the lantern-bearer muttered when he saw Oberyn looking. "Too many holes." "How many?" Oberyn asked. The man shrugged. "Not enough," he said. Hours later, Castle Black came into view. Less a castle than a cluster of stone and wood hunched beneath the wall's shadow. Smoke rose from chimneys. Men moved with purpose, hauling timbers, sharpening steel, training in the yard despite the cold. The place felt like a wound that refused to heal. As Oberyn approached, he could feel the eyes on him again. This time not Bolton scouts, but brothers in black, measuring the southern prince who had walked into their freezing world as if he belonged. Oberyn's smile stayed in place, but his hand brushed the pouch at his belt. Somewhere inside those walls, Jon Snow existed. Breathing, unaware, carrying a bloodline like a hidden knife. Oberyn Martell stepped through Castle Black's gate and into the heart of the cold. Jon Snow first saw the Dornishman as a streak of color that did not belong. Castle Black was a palette of grays and blacks and the pale blue of ice. Even blood looked darker here. So when a man stepped into the yard wearing a cloak that held the faint memory of red beneath its travel stains, it was like seeing a flame in snow. Jon had been overseeing drills, what little could be managed with too few men and too many tasks, when the yard's murmur shifted. He turned, hand on Longclaw's pommel out of habit more than threat. Habit kept you alive. Habit had saved him more times than bravery ever had. Oberyn Martell walked in as if the yard were a court and the wall a backdrop for his entrance. He wore no armor now, only heavy wool and leather, but he carried himself like a man who had never doubted his place anywhere. Behind him came a woman, her hood up, her eyes sharp, Ellaria Sand, though Jon did not know her name yet. Men stopped mid-swing, swords dipped. Even the usual muttering of complaints stalled. Ser Alliser Thorne's face twisted into contempt the moment he recognized the visitor's bearing. "What is this?" he demanded loudly, as if volume could substitute for authority. Maester Aemon sat by a brazier near the edge of the yard, hands folded, blind eyes turned toward the commotion. Samwell Tarly hovered nearby, clutching a stack of books like a shield. Jon saw Sam's eyes widen, saw the flicker of fascination. Sam loved stories, and here one walked in wearing its own legend. Oberyn's gaze found Jon almost immediately, as if he had known exactly where to look. His eyes were dark and bright, amused in a way that made Jon's instincts prickle. "Jon Snow," Oberyn said, and his voice carried like warm wine in cold air. Jon's jaw tightened. He did not like strangers speaking his name as if they owned it. "Prince Oberyn," Jon replied cautiously. He had heard of him. Everyone had. "What business brings you to the wall?"
"Será Liceres Norted."
"He's lost," he spat. "Southerners always are." Oberyn's smile flicked toward Thorne like a whip crack. "And yet you found your way here," he said lightly. "How tragic." A few brothers laughed, quickly smothered. Thorne's face reddened. Jon stepped forward, placing himself between the prince and the watch, his posture firm. "If you've come to mock us," Jon said, "you can turn around and ride back south." Oberyn's eyes gleamed. "Mock you?" he repeated, and there was genuine surprise in it.
"No.
"I came because you are the only men in this realm doing your duty without being paid in gold." He paused. "I came because winter is coming and your kings are too busy killing each other to notice." Jon's mouth tightened. He had heard those words before. Winter is coming. So often it had become a prayer. Coming from a Dornish prince, they sounded almost obscene. "And I came," Oberyn added, voice lowering slightly, "because I need to speak to you privately." That set the yard murmuring again. Private audiences were rare at the wall. Secrets were rarer. Ser Alliser stepped forward, eyes blazing. "You don't command here," he snarled. "This is the Night's Watch. You'll speak to whoever is in charge." Maester Aemon's voice drifted across the yard, thin but firm. "Ser Alliser," he said softly. Thorne froze as if struck. Aemon's blind face tilted toward where Oberyn stood. "Prince Oberyn Martell," Aemon said, each word precise. "You honor us by coming so far." Oberyn bowed, a graceful dip of head and shoulders. "Maester," he said warmly, "the honor is mine." Aemon's expression was calm. "If you have business with Jon Snow," he said, "then you may speak to him in the Lord Commander's tower." He paused. "What is said there will be heard only by those who need to hear it." Jon's gaze flicked to Aemon, surprised. The old man's tone held something Jon could not name. An awareness, perhaps, of the way secrets could reshape lives. Ser Alliser looked furious, but he could not argue with Aemon without looking like a fool. He snapped his mouth shut and stalked away, cloak flapping like a crow's wing. Jon gestured sharply. "This way," he said to Oberyn, voice clipped. Oberyn followed without fuss, Ellaria close behind. Sam watched them pass, eyes wide, then looked to Jon as if wanting to speak. Jon shook his head once, a silent command. Later, as they climbed the stairs toward the tower, the cold seemed to deepen. The stone walls held winter in their pores. Wind moaned outside like something searching for a crack. Jon opened the door to the tower chamber. It was plain. A table, a few chairs, maps pinned to walls, a small fire struggling in a hearth. It smelled of smoke and damp wool. Oberyn stepped inside, looking around with interest, as if cataloging weaknesses. Ellaria remained near the door, watching Jon as if he were a threat. Jon closed the door and turned to face the prince. "Speak," he said, quickly. Oberyn's smile softened. "Straight to it," he said. "I like that." He took a step closer. "Tell me, Jon Snow, what do you know of your mother?" Jon's eyes hardened instantly. The question was a slap. "Nothing," he said flatly, "and it's none of your concern." Oberyn's gaze did not move. "It is," he said softly, "because your mother's name is tied to the realm's blood." Jon's hand tightened on Longclaw's hilt. "If this is some southern game," he warned, "I'll throw you off the wall myself." Oberyn's smile sharpened, pleased rather than frightened. "Good," he said. "That means you're not weak." Ellaria's eyes narrowed. "Oberyn," she murmured, a warning. Oberyn ignored her. His gaze stayed on Jon, and the warmth in it drained until only truth remained. "Your name," Oberyn said quietly, "is a lie that kept you alive." The words landed in the room like a dropped blade. Jon's breath caught. "What?" Jon demanded, voice rough. Oberyn did not flinch. "Jon Snow," he said again, "is the name a good man gave you so monsters could not." He paused, then added, soft as a whisper and sharp as steel, "Your father was Rhaegar Targaryen." For a heartbeat, the fire seemed to dim. The wind outside moaned louder. Jon stared at Oberyn as if the prince had spoken in another language. "You lie," Jon said, and the denial came fast, instinctive. "You're trying to." "I don't lie about dead princes," Oberyn replied quietly. "I learned long ago that lies about Targaryens get people killed." Jon's mouth opened, then closed. His mind flooded with old memories. Ned Stark's face when asked about his mother, the way his Lord Father's eyes had turned to stone, the silence, the refusal, the shame he had assumed. "No," Jon whispered, and the word was not for Oberyn. It was for the boy he had been. Oberyn's gaze held him, unblinking. "Yes," he said softly, "and your mother was Lyanna Stark." Jon's knees felt suddenly unsteady. He gripped the back of a chair without realizing he'd moved. Lyanna Stark. The name was not a story here. It was a wound still remembered by old Northerners. A girl stolen, a war begun, promise. Jon's voice came out rough. "Prove it," he said. Oberyn's smile returned, not mocking now, but grim. "I can," he said, "and I will." He touched the pouch at his belt, fingers lingering. "But first, you need to decide whether you want the truth or whether you want the comfort of a lie." Jon stared at him, breath steaming in the cold air, and somewhere deep inside, something that had always been hungry finally found the scent of its own name. Jon needed air. The room's walls felt too close after those names. Rhaegar, Lyanna, names that belonged in songs and graves, not in his chest. He pushed past Oberyn without ceremony and climbed the narrow stairs that led to the top of the wall. The cold hit him like a slap and a relief at the same time, sharp enough to clear the fog in his head. Oberyn followed, quieter than Jon expected. The Dornish prince moved with an ease that did not belong on ice, but he adapted as if his body could learn any terrain if his will demanded it. At the top, the world was nothing but wind and darkness. Torches flickered along the walkway, their light trembling against the vast white face of the wall. Far below, the forest lay like a black sea. Snowfields stretched beyond, pale under starlight. Ghosts emerged from the shadows, silent as breath. The direwolf's red eyes fixed on Oberyn, unblinking. Oberyn paused, amused. "A beautiful beast," he murmured. "Don't touch him," Jon said automatically. Oberyn held up empty hands. "I value my fingers," he said lightly. Jon stared out into the dark. His mind was still trying to rearrange itself around the truth. If it was truth, he forced himself to breathe slowly, to anchor in something simple. The cold, the smell of smoke, Ghost's quiet presence. "You said you can prove it," Jon said finally, voice tight. Oberyn's cloak snapped in the wind. "I met Howland Reed," he said. Jon's head turned sharply. "Howland Reed," he echoed. The name was a half-myth even in the north, a Crannogman lord who rarely left his swamps. If Howland spoke, men listened because he almost never did. Oberyn nodded once. "He told me what he saw at the Tower of Joy," he said. "He told me what Lyanna said before she died." His voice softened. "And he gave me something." Jon's throat tightened. "What?" he asked. Oberyn's hand moved toward his belt, then stopped. "Not yet," he said quietly. "Not when your brothers might see. Not when a gust could snatch it away." He looked at Jon, expression intent. "I didn't come here to hang you with secrets. I came to offer you a choice before someone else makes it for you." Jon's mouth twisted. "Choice," he repeated bitterly. "Issues. I took vows." Oberyn's eyes gleamed. "You took vows to protect the realm," he said. not to protect the lives of men who wanted to use you. Jon's hands clenched on the icy parapet. If I'm what you say, he whispered, then my whole life was built on a promise, Oberyn finished softly. A promise made because the world would have killed you for being born. Jon's breath steamed. He could see his father's face. Ned Stark, stern, weary, honorable. A man who had carried shame like armor. Jon had hated that shame. He had built himself around it. Now Oberyn was telling him the shame had been a shield. And that made it worse, somehow, because it meant Ned had suffered for him in silence. Below them, Ghost's ears pricked. The direwolf's head turned toward a section of the wall where the torches were dimmer. Jon felt it too. Something subtle, a shift in the air, the way silence deepened. Oberyn noticed Jon's change in posture. What is it? He asked, voice low. Jon's gaze narrowed. Movement, he said. They moved together along the top of the wall, boots crunching on snow. The wind howled, making torches gutter. Below, darkness pressed close. Then Jon saw it. A shape against the ice, wrong, jerky, too pale. Fingers clawing at frozen stone. A face half-rotted, eyes empty as old wells. It was climbing, impossibly, at a seam where ice met cracked stone. It moved with stubborn hunger, not fear. A white, Jon's stomach dropped. Raise the alarm, he snapped over his shoulder. And a black brother nearby turned, eyes widening, shouting down the stairway. Oberyn's spear was not with him up here, but his dagger was. He drew it in a flash, steel catching torchlight. Dead men climb walls now? He asked, voice sharp with disbelief and excitement both. They do when something drives them, Jon said grimly. He drew Longclaw, the Valyrian steel dark and hungry in torchlight. The white's fingers found the edge of the walkway. It hauled itself up with a rasping sound, ice scraping. Its mouth opened, and a wet, breathless moan slid out. More sound than voice. Jon stepped forward and swung. Longclaw bit through dead flesh and bone with ease, but the white didn't fall the way a living man fell. It flailed, clawing, trying to reach his throat even as half its body separated. Oberyn moved in fast. His dagger stabbed into the white's eye socket, twisting hard. The thing convulsed, snapping its teeth inches from Oberyn's wrist. Oberyn yanked back, blood, black and sluggish, spattering the ice. It still moved. Fire! Jon shouted. A black brother rushed forward with a torch, jabbing it toward the white. The flame caught ragged cloth, then flesh, and the smell that rose was foul enough to make men gag. The white thrashed, limbs jerking, until the fire ate through whatever force held it, collapsed into a smoking heap. Jon's breath came hard. He stared at the burned remains, heart pounding. He had fought wildlings and lived. The dead were different. They did not bargain. They did not fear. They did not stop. Oberyn wiped his dagger on the ice, then looked at Jon with eyes bright. So, he said softly, this is what you face while kings play at crowns. Jon's jaw clenched. Yes, he said. Oberyn's gaze turned north, beyond the wall's edge, beyond the dark forest. Then your claim matters, he said quietly. Not because you deserve a throne, because the realm needs a man who believes in duty more than glory. Jon stared at the smoking remains and felt the cold settle deeper into him. Duty, vows, truth, the dead climbing the wall. He realized, with a sudden sick certainty, that whether Oberyn lied or not, the world was already changing. And it would not ask his permission. They met again where warmth fought cold and did not quite win. Maester Aemon's chamber was small, crowded with books and scrolls that smelled of dust and smoke. A brazier burned low, its coals glowing like tired eyes. The old Maester sat near it, blind face turned toward sound, hands folded as if he were holding a prayer between his fingers. Samwell Tarly was there too, at Jon's request, because Sam had a way of listening that made the world less sharp. He hovered near the shelves, clutching a book even now as if it might defend him from whatever was about to happen. Ilaria stood by the door, silent, her posture a warning. Oberyn stood at the table, cloak shrugged back, his expression stripped of courtly ease. Jon sat opposite, Longclaw propped beside his chair. His hands were steady now, but his mind was not. The white's burned stench still clung to his memory. It made everything else, crowns, claims, southern plots, feel both absurd and urgent. Oberyn reached into the pouch at his belt and drew out the plain gold ring. He set it on the table with a soft clink, then placed the pressed blue rose beside it. The petals were brittle, flattened into a fragile ghost of color. Jon stared. The ring looked like nothing. The rose looked like a dead thing that should have been thrown away. And yet, his chest tightened as if the objects carried weight beyond metal and flower. "Howland Reed gave these to you," Jon said, voice rough. Oberyn nodded once. "He said your Lord Father kept them as memory," he said, "and gave them away only when he understood memory might be needed as proof." Maester Aemon's head tilted slightly. "A ring," he murmured, "and a rose." Sam's eyes were wide. "Blue roses," Sam whispered, almost to himself, "like the songs." Jon's throat tightened. He looked at the rose until the world blurred slightly. He thought of a young woman with dark hair, laughing somewhere far away in time. He thought of her dying, blood and roses in the air. He swallowed hard. "Why bring this to me?" Jon asked Oberyn. "Why not bring it to kings?" Oberyn's smile was faint and bitter. "Because kings will use you," he said simply, "and because you deserve to hear it first." He leaned forward slightly. "You have lived as a bastard, Jon Snow. You have worn shame like armor. That shame was a lie meant to keep you breathing." His eyes burned. "I will not let your life be rewritten by men who do not know what it cost." Jon's jaw clenched. "And what do you want?" he demanded. "Don't pretend this is charity. You want something." Oberyn's gaze did not flinch. "Yes," he said. "I want Tywin Lannister's story to die. I want the realm to remember Elia Martell and her children not as casualties, but as a crime." He paused, voice softening. "And I want the realm to stop killing itself long enough to face what climbs your wall." Maester Aemon's blind face turned toward Oberyn. "You speak of duty," Aemon said quietly. Oberyn's eyes flicked to the old man with respect. "I speak of necessity," he replied. "Sometimes they are the same." Jon stared at the ring. His hand hovered over it, then pulled back. Touching it felt like accepting something. He wasn't ready. "My vows," Jon said, voice tight. "They matter." "They do," Maester Aemon agreed softly. "They always do." Oberyn looked at Jon, expression intent. "Your vows were made with the truth hidden from you," he said. "That matters too." Jon's eyes flashed. "Are you saying my vows don't bind me?" he demanded. Oberyn's voice was careful. "I am saying," he replied, "that vows are meant to serve honor, not traps." He gestured toward the rose. "Ned Stark made a vow to your mother. He broke the truth to keep it." His eyes sharpened. "Would you honor that vow by living forever as a lie?" Jon's throat tightened. He looked at Aemon, desperate for something steady. "Maester," he said, "what do I do with this?" Aemon's expression was calm, and somehow that calm was mercy. "You listen," Aemon said softly. "You learn, and you choose with open eyes." Sam's voice trembled. "If it's true," he said, "it changes everything." Jon's laugh was bitter. "Everything is already changing," he said, thinking of dead fingers clawing ice. He looked back at Oberyn. "What happens if I tell my brothers?" he asked. Oberyn's smile was thin. "Someone will sell the secret for a cup of ale," he said, "and you will be dead before the night is out." Jon's hands clenched. "So I say nothing," he said, voice flat. "For now," Aemon murmured. Oberyn leaned closer. "For now," he echoed. "But you will not be able to keep it forever. Not if you live. Not if you lead." Jon stared at the ring again. At last, slowly, he reached out and touched it with the tip of one finger. The metal was cold. It did not feel like destiny. It felt like a simple thing made heavy by men's choices. He pulled his hand back. "If this is true," Jon said slowly, Then my father, Ned Stark, loved you, Aemon said gently, finishing the thought. Loved you enough to be thought dishonorable. Jon's eyes stung. He blinked hard, furious at the weakness. He looked at Oberyn. If I am what you say, he said, then there are men who will want me dead. Oberyn's smile sharpened. Yes, he said, and there are men who will want to use you. His eyes flashed. I am offering you a shield against both. Jon's jaw tightened. Dorn, he said. Oberyn nodded. Dorn, he agreed. Spears, ships, a voice in a realm that has ignored your north for too long. He paused. And in return, you will speak Oberyn Martell's name when you have the power to make it matter. Jon held his gaze. You would make me swear, he said. Oberyn's smile was quiet. I would make you promise, he said, and the word carried the weight of Lyanna's dying breath. Jon looked down at the rose, then at the ring. Then he looked up, eyes hard again, the way they had to be to survive. I won't break my vows for a crown, Jon said. Not now, not while the Ad climb my wall and wildlings gather in the dark. He leaned forward. But I will not call you a liar, not until I hear Howland Reed with my own ears. Oberyn's gaze held steady. He will not come easily, he warned. Then I will go to him, Jon said quietly, surprising even himself with the certainty. If the time comes. Aemon's blind face turned toward Jon, and in that moment Jon felt as if the old man could see him more clearly than anyone. Wisely spoken, Aemon murmured. Oberyn straightened, and for the first time since entering the wall's shadow, he looked satisfied, not triumphant, but resolved. Then we have a beginning, Oberyn said softly. Jon nodded once. We do, he agreed. Outside, the wind howled against stone. Somewhere in the yard, a horn sounded. Not the deep, ancient blast for whites, but a signal that something moved in the dark forest beyond the wall. Men shouted. Boots pounded on frozen ground. Jon rose instantly, duty snapping into place like a drawn sword. He looked at Oberyn. If you want to prove you're not here only for crowns, Jon said, voice hard, then come. Oberyn's smile flashed, fierce and bright. Gladly, he said. Illyria's eyes tightened, but she said nothing as Oberyn followed Jon out into the cold. The ring and the rose remained on the table for a heartbeat longer, small and silent, while outside the world demanded steel. And somewhere beyond the trees, beyond the ice, beyond the reach of kings and princes, something ancient listened to names spoken at last.